weekly board meeting. It is Wednesday, August 26th at 9 a.m. If you would please rise with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
I want to add a quick, if I may, Mr. Chair, add a quick report on the California fires. It'll take about 1 minute, and then I have a press release from Senator Dallas Hurd and State Representative David Brock Smith that I would like to read to the public, please.
Yes, the Public Health Department has a contract agreement amendment with OHA. We see these routinely. We handle them under consent. And what it is it has to be approved by the board by the end of August 30th. So we want to put that amendment on the agenda. I believe JJ has shared that with you.
It's on as H, yes. Any further amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to pull 5F out of consent agenda just for a quick question, if I may.
Why don't we address it right now?
Why don't we pull it out and have a discussion? I'll get to my question if that's what you prefer. And that is, when we increased the salaries, it was primarily for the road department, if I recall. It was about 130,000. So I just want to see if that's reflected in the new master payroll information. So I don't know who would have that information, but short discussion.
I can comment on that.
Thank you.
No, it would not, because it's a snapshot in time of what was in place as of July 1st, and as of July 1st, the road union had not approved the wage scale yet.
So it is reflected in the new report then?
No, it's not, because the union still hasn't approved the wage scale.
Okay. So it's on, but it's on the consent agenda today.
To reflect the SEIU union and the other changes that have been there since July 1st.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Anything further? I have a motion, please.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
So if I may, Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Boyce, go ahead.
Thank you. California right now has 370 fires. They've lost 1,400 homes, 7 deaths. They can't even calculate the acres. The reason I want to bring it up today is because it is in Northern California. We may even start seeing some smoke here pretty soon. So if the public is tuned in here, that's where the smoke is coming from. So far, as you know, Curry County's only lost 1 acre. But because there has been 7 deaths, and because, yeah, it's between those 375 fires, it is over 1 million acres. But again, don't quote me on that, because that is a rough estimate, because it's moving so fast. I'm not saying the fires are moving north, but they very well could at some point. I just want the public to be tremendously on the ball here, and when they're exposed to that smoke, if in fact it happens, just do your research. We're on the ball here, and we're doing everything we can to get the public ready. So the other thing is has to do, Mr. Chair, with the Portland issue. This press release from David Brock Smith and Dallas Hurd, I think, is really important. Portland is one of the most fragile, and due to the destruction in that community, in the entire country, tremendous vandalism, tremendous injuries. We've seen it all. So I appreciate you allowing me the time here to read this, and I hope the public can understand where two representatives are going with trying to understand how Oregon combines their efforts and responds to this, and hopefully at some point brings Portland back into some sort of sanity. Salem, Oregon, today, State Representative David Brock Smith and State Senator Dallas Hurd, the members of the Oregon Southwest House and Senate District 1, again condemn the growing hate, violence, arson, and brutal assault on the public, police, and property in Portland, and continue to call on the governor and their legislative Portland colleagues to join them in condemning these deliberate acts. As we pass the 84th day of protest, this is written on the 20th, by the way, Mr. Chair, to which I support the rights to do so, the violence touted by the governor and supermajority as caused by the federal officers defending the federal courthouse continues to grow exponentially in the absence of those federal officers, said Representative Brock Smith, Republican Port Orford. I support the OSP superintendent's decision to pull his troopers from Portland. One of my sons was there for 14 days. No injuries to him or his men. He was responsible for 7. In the face of the Multnomah County DA's decision to not, this is why the troopers left, spokesman Tim Fox, is a great man, DA's decision to not prosecute the rioters' crimes so that our OSP troopers can resume their duties in other areas of the state where they are respected and their public service is appreciated, he said. As a rampant violence, brutal assaults, destruction of property, and lawlessness from rioters continues to spread throughout Portland and into residential areas, we call again on Governor Brown and our colleagues to condemn these horrific lawless acts towards the public. Their lack of this condemnation is viewed as condoning the rioters' lawless acts, said Representative Brock Smith. As residents of Portland visit my district, or residents of my district visit that of my legislative colleagues in Portland, every Oregonian deserves a right to have the protection of health, life, and safety is being lost by the acts of this violence that continue to escalate and proliferate throughout Portland in the absence of their representative leaders' condemnation of it. It's unimaginable to me that Democrat leaders across the highest levels of government would continue to stay silent despite the destruction and hate that has befallen their city and is now spreading from Portland to other parts of our state. Senator Dallas Hurd, Republican Roseburg, I have stated it previously, but it needs to be said again and again that I fully support all people's right to assemble and protest. But this isn't just protesting. Governor Brown and Portland legislators have stood idly by and watched as rioters pillage the streets of Portland, all the while actively punishing the smallest of the small business owners and communities of faith across the state for simply trying to stay afloat and provide hope during this pandemic. Small mom and pop working class shops are closing the doors for good under the crushing restrictions and penalties put in place by Governor Brown and her elected House and Senate Democrats. Oregonians of all races and backgrounds who for so long informed the pillars of our communities are disappearing, and instead of standing up for and fighting for those peaceful communities, their fates are left up to this will, the will of the mob. Make no mistake, there's no room for hate, bigotry, and violence from the extreme right or left of this political spectrum. We, the legislators from Southwest Oregon, stand against and condemn any form of violence and hate against anyone, capitalized. The elected Democrats running the entire state of Oregon expose their hypocrisy with their passing and every day that they don't push back against this hate and intimidation, added Senator Hurd. While with escalating attacks spreading across Portland, we again call on our colleagues to join us in advocating to end the violence that continues to threaten the health, lives, and safety of our Oregon peace officers, residents, their business, and families across our state. And then they give some links to the violence that you better be ready if you decide to click on any of those links. Chair Pash, that's my line of duty desk for police officers, military, and firefighters today. Thank you for allowing that time.
All right. Next, we have presentations. 4A, proclaiming September Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. Action Month, Commissioner Boyce and Gordon Clay.
Well, thank you, Gordon. You can come on up if you like. Thank you for making the trip up from Brookings. Thank you for holding our Suicide Awareness and Prevention Committee together. Boy, I've had a lot of very constructive emails, and I'm very thankful for the support you're getting. Certainly, I want to commend you for the funds that you've raised, almost $6,000, a little less. And who's going to say no to you? This has been your life's work, and I just really appreciate the effort you've made and your attendance here by meeting or bi-weekly, and you're making a difference in our county and throughout our state on preventing suicide. And so thank you for this opportunity to remind the public that September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. You're the best. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Threw me off a little bit there. It's actually 7,000, 56,000 for this project, and I got another one from United Way for COVID-related things for 1,500. So
And by the way,
we keep going.
All Care and Advanced Health really came through nicely.
Boy, did they.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Did they ever. So anyway, thank you. For the record, my name is Gordon Clay from Brookings, Oregon. August is Overdose Awareness Month. According to the New England Journal of Medicine, accidental drug overdoses, deaths, and suicides have increased at an extreme rate during the days of this pandemic. Suspected overdoses nationally jumped 18% in March of this year, 29% in April, and 42% in May. This data is from ambulance teams, hospitals, and the police. A growing number of overdoses now occur in suburban and non-urban settings, often with affluent neighborhoods. According to a 2014 study, drug users most at risk of overdose are white, middle-aged suburban men. The highest overdose rate in 2015 represented people between the ages of 45 and 54. I really want to get over the image that these are people living under the bridge and that kind of thing. It's happening. In fact, one of the stats, I don't know if they came back and talked about it, but there was a stat from the gals that were here a month ago that there were 6 overdoses in 5 days in Brookings. And my piece there is to see that the AA meetings are opened as quickly as possible, because my venture that more people will die from drug overdose while meetings are closed than die from COVID-19. They have lost their support systems. September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Plus Action Month. Suicide is at an all-time high. The 2017 analysis by the CDC broke down categories such as cancer into separate cancers and then listed the top 50 leading causes of death. In Oregon, suicide was the leading cause of death for 4 of 7 age categories, from 15 to 54. We also know that suicide in rural Oregon is much higher than in Curry County. We lead all 36 counties in per capita suicides. The 2019 Healthy Teen Survey said 26% of our 11th graders reported that they had seriously considered attempting suicide, and 9% last year actually attempted suicide. 90% of people who die by suicide have demonstrated warning signs, but their friends had not picked up on them. Especially during this pandemic, don't be the one of those friends. Learn the risk factors and warning signs and what to do so that when you're around a friend, neighbor, colleague, or family member who is showing those signs, you can simply ask with confidence, "Are you okay?" And let them know that it's okay to say, "I'm not okay." That conversation could save their life, and it might change yours too. Together we can change the conversation
by countering myths and fear with information and action steps everyone can take. We all have a role to play in suicide prevention, not only during the months of August and September, but all year long. So join me in this effort, won't you?
Commissioner Gold?
Gordon, first of all, let me thank you for your efforts here. I know I've personally been affected by suicide in my family, but I would suggest that you add one more whereas. I know that September 10th is the Worldwide Suicide Prevention Day, and if you could add the whereas, September 10th is Worldwide Suicide Prevention Day, and then do the proclamation with now, therefore.
I accept the amendment.
Okay, so
And I think your board will too.
I would like to make a motion that we approve this proclamation as amended.
Thank you.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold?
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce?
Yes.
Chair Pash?
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Could we have a reading of the proclamation for the people that are viewing?
Commissioner Boyce?
Can we do that on September 2nd, just for a quick added reminder? Would that be okay, or today?
I prefer today
Okay.
because we're in this issue, and to let people know what we voted on.
Let me get that up here. You have it handy?
Yes.
I won't massacre this one. I did the poor press release from our state rep. Proclaiming September as Suicide Awareness and Prevention Action Month. September. Whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background, and suicide is a major public health issue that requires vigilant attention and preventative action. And whereas according to the Center for Disease Control in 2017, suicide was the leading cause of death for 15 to 54-year-old Oregonians. Wow, and Curry County led the state 2011 through 2017 in per capita suicides. And whereas 20% of Curry County 11th graders reported seriously considered attempting suicide, and 9% actually attempted suicide last year. And whereas each death by suicide directly impacts numerous family members, friends, loved ones, and by extension the entire community, and whereas every member of our community should understand that throughout life's struggles we all need the occasional reminder that we are all silently fighting our own battles, especially during this pandemic. And whereas reducing the stigma by discussing suicide and warning signs, that's been really helpful on the committee to learn. The more, the faster, the better. Promoting safe and responsible care of lethal means and increasing public awareness of the resources available for at-risk individuals encourages help-seeking behaviors. I'm going to repeat that. Encourages help-seeking behaviors and helps attempt survivors and survivors of suicide loss in their personal healing. And whereas it is important to recognize the connections that mental health conditions and substance use disorders have to suicide, as well as how other external factors, including harassment, bullying, discrimination, and the availability of a firearm contribute, and whereas asking for help is a sign of real strength and the first step towards achieving mental wellness, particularly during the extended period of the COVID-19 pandemic, and adding Commissioner Gold's quick sentence here, whereas 9/10 is Worldwide Suicide Prevention Day, and therefore, the Curry County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims September 2020 as Suicide Awareness and Prevention and Action Month. Be it further resolved, the Commissioners encourage all citizens to learn those warning signs, trust their instincts, and use that information to ask a troubled friend, colleague, or family member, are you okay? Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, moving on to 4B, Oregon Coast Energy Alliance Network. Commissioner Boyce and Ms. Souza.
That's a year from now, maybe a few months from now. You left early this morning.
I did. Early for me, not for some. Some people are
So,
people.
former Secretary of State Bill Bradbury serves on your board, and he really said something interesting the other day when it comes to ocean energy and offshore wind. He says, my goodness, Curry County, so that would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Coos County to Crescent City, is the Saudi Arabia of wind, offshore wind. And so I chuckled, but there's some real truth to that. So it's been great getting to know you and the rest of the board, and I don't know, maybe it's too early, maybe I can't reveal, but you have a certain entity that's hired you to, or will hire you as a project manager. Can you give us just a little information on that, or does that need to be delayed? Port of?
I don't know. That needs to be delayed.
Okay, so we're pushing for that, and I think you'd be an excellent project manager. So welcome, and thanks for coming to Curry County and offering this time today. It's been great to see your work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Chair Pash, Commissioner Gould, and Weiss. My name is Shannon Souza, and is this coming through all right? All right. I really appreciate your time. I know you have tons of pressing issues, and this is something that's way out on the horizon, so to speak, pun intended. I'm here today to talk to you about a new organization, OCEAN, which is Oregon Coast Energy Alliance Network. Let you know what we're up to, why we're up to it, and get some of your initial thoughts and feedback, and encourage you to keep the conversation going as you or your constituents have questions or concerns about it. So OCEAN formed last year. We had a representative of Coos Bay that lives out in Coos Bay who went up to one of BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, one of their task force meetings for the state of Oregon on offshore wind, and wanted to know what was going on. Came back from that meeting deciding that we really needed to start a conversation out here on the coast that was driven by us, people who live on the coast, about what exactly is going on, what is the action of the task force, and what is this offshore wind? Do we want it? What might it look like? We wanted to know more. I'm wondering if there's a better way to do this. So we have our mission statement here. We are a cross-cultural, community-based organization. We have this initial mission, as I said, to explore and expedite the investigation into offshore wind, to find out more about what its challenges are and what its opportunities are, and also for all of these advanced energy technologies. I'm talking about microgrids, green hydrogen, everything that's coming out, and how does it fit in with the coastal perspective. So our purpose is to evaluate those impacts and then to maximize the social and economic benefits to the people who live on the coast of any of those technologies. We have a broad swath on our board of directors. I'm very happy to say, representing climate action, tribes, maritime commerce, resilience, manufacturing, sustainable development, electeds, conservation, economic, workforce and supply chain development, labor, public, and investment sectors. And this is of primary importance to me because I'm coming to you today from Coos Bay, which, as you may know, has been really torn apart over some differences in opinion about natural gas, the LNG terminal, as well as management of the Elliott State Forest. And basically what we have here on this board is a group of locals who are looking for something that we can all get behind and say yes to and work together. So we have representatives from both of those kind of opposition parties. So a little bit of our context about what those opportunities and barriers are specific to offshore wind. Oregon is an energy importer. We, for our independent frontier mindset in energy, we really don't behave that way. We rely on imports of electricity from the states around us. A lot of our electricity that we're using, not down here because you receive clean hydro from the Northwest, but across the state, we're still almost at 30% coal that's driving our electricity. The dots that you see on the map over here, those are the size in terms of generation capacity for the generators that are making that electricity that we consume. We have almost half of this is non-renewable generation, and this becomes increasingly important as the states below us and above us have 100% renewable portfolio standards that they're ramping up to. So a lot of those big dots that you see are going to be retired. Out here on the coast, this map is actually of transmission lines. Those are the lines that you see there, and all of these dots are generation capacity for electricity within the state of Oregon. As you can see, and you all know, we don't have generation capacity out here on the coast. All of our electricity comes to us, most of it from the Pacific Northwest, increasingly some of it from over here, but it's got a long way to go. And as you know, it's traveling through catastrophe-prone routes. Our Region 10 FEMA director likes to say that we live in a part of the world that is susceptible to every catastrophe known to people except for locusts and volcanoes. So we see that we've got this opportunity out here. This map, what this shows, is kind of it's a heat map, but consider this is wind resource. And right off of our coast here, the deeper the color, whoops, let's go back. Didn't mean to move so quick. That's the higher the resource. So as you can see, we do have world-class offshore wind resource off of our southern Oregon coast as well as Northern California. Down in California, the Bureau has been working on establishing call areas. These are areas that the Federal Bureau leases out. This whole program was developed largely around offshore oil drilling. So they're applying it to another energy sector, as they have already been doing on the East Coast. Down in California, they really want to get the electricity that they can harvest out here to the big load centers that they have down here, San Francisco, Southern California, and they pay a lot for their electricity. It's a very lucrative market. So understandably, that's where they started. And they've established 2 call areas. One of those call areas is down around Morro Bay, so this is Monterey area. That's nice when you look at the proximity to the load and all of those who will pay so well for the electricity. It's also great because the transmission system is all ready to roll. However, it has some serious conflicts, most notably with Department of Defense and their activities. So those call areas are questionable right now. There's even consideration of moving into the marine sanctuary at Monterey Bay, which, believe you me, has a lot of pushback already. So we look up to the north off of Humboldt, where the resource is even better, but there's not a lot of load there. And they just released a study on the transmission, the terrestrial side, the land-based transmission that they have. And in order to get the electrons from up here down to here, they would need to reconductor, that is, lay new transmission lines, which is prohibitively expensive until we're talking about multiple gigawatts of power. So all of a sudden, all of the investment community and developers are looking at Oregon. So Oregon's opportunity, when we first started looking into this in October, both Commissioner Boyce and I think it's safe to say we just started learning about offshore wind in October. When we started this, the understanding was that Oregon's transmission system could not accommodate this, and that in order for this development to occur and for Southern Oregon to benefit from it, we needed to wait for maybe a $5 billion high voltage deep sea transmission line to connect whatever we would put off our coast with these loads down here. It wasn't believed that we could accommodate it here. This all changed. The Pacific Northwest National Laboratories was under contract with BOEM to do a more thorough investigation of the transmission situation here in Oregon. And what they have found is that we can accommodate 2 to 3 gigawatts in our own consumption, that this would significantly relieve some of the Bonneville Power Association's concerns and conflicts that they have trying to transmit all of this electricity through their big metro-centric hubs and out to the coast and other places. They could actually feed that from the west into the grid. Another opportunity is that there's a lot of conversation, particularly you don't have to think very hard about rolling blackouts that are happening just down to the south of us, and we know that those are coming to the northwest in all likelihood as well. So a lot of folks are starting to muse about thinking about the entire western grid and how might it better be set up so that it's more robust and we can continue to serve all of our needs, even when there are isolated issues from parts of that grid. We also have the West Coast population, which is projected to grow 17% in the next 20 years. That's before COVID hit. I don't know if your housing prices have been doing what they're doing up, but I think that's a modest number. And meanwhile, we're also electrifying the transportation grid. So there's a lot of electricity that needs to be generated, and it needs to be clean. Now, understandably, this is expensive, new cutting-edge technology, and the initial electrons that roll off of the ocean are going to be more expensive. There are some additional emerging energy markets. Just to name a couple, one of the developers that we've been speaking with, they also represent an investment firm that is all of these Northern European workers' pension plans that specifically look for carbon investments and are looking for projects that are labor positive, that invest in the communities with things like community benefit agreements and such, and they pay for the margin above that cost. Another one, Angie, who has recently become a member of Ocean and is supporting our efforts. This is the biggest energy developer in the world. They have 170,000 employees and quite a bit of R&D. They're really interested in investing in these carbon markets. And when we're talking about floating offshore wind, it's not just the electrons, the carbon footprint, but also investigating the potential for developing vegetative aquaculture under the water on all the tethers that are holding these arrays in place. So there's a lot of carbon sinking to be done there. So that's exciting. And just 2 weeks ago, a power purchase agreement was set up between Ørsted, that's another member of Ocean, that's definitely tracking and interested, and TSMC, which is a Taiwanese semiconductor company, for 920 megawatts of power. Again, that's that margin above the market cost that this company is paying. And if we're talking about domestically, over on the East Coast, actually what got things going was Google Corporation, who is very interested in buying clean energy. So it's there are a lot of factors at play. Obviously, we have ports all along the southern coast. When we look at floating wind and the type of industry that it is, it needs all kinds of help and assistance. And depending on the logistics of the port, how deep the draft is, what the FAA restrictions are, etc., you kind of fit and pick and choose which ports serve how. Ports like Gold Beach and Port Orford would more likely be those where we would have people working, servicers, you know, you're running boats basically out to maintain and service. Whereas the Port of Coos Bay, we might be able to get some actual fabrication going and putting the parts and pieces together. So you kind of do the port analysis, and that's actually something that Ocean is pushing very hard on, is to do an analysis of specific economic benefits to each of our ports. What roles would they serve around this 2 to 3 gigawatt potential that we have out here? Obviously, we have potential barriers with other uses, just as down on the central coast of California, they have conflicts with the Department of Defense. We have fishers, we have other transport out there, and we need to make sure that the cost of the power is not put onto the ratepayers. The high voltage deep sea transmission line to the California market, if we're to go above 2 to 3 gigawatts, is also a long-term barrier. So specifically Ocean, and what we're doing is we got into this, we look around, some of us have quite a bit of experience doing federal Nexus permit projects, 15-year design permitting. And we know that the way that this goes traditionally is the developers talk to the agency, in this case it's BOEM, they come up with what they would like to see, they kind of test, do a little bit of socialization with some others that might be touched, but by the time the formal proposal is done, millions, sometimes tens of millions of dollars have been spent. The project is really well formed. It's not very pliable. And then we get to the environmental impact statement when we have a lot of stakeholder engagement and it's not very pliable, and we end up in litigation. And it's a waste of everyone's time and money, in our opinion. So traditionally, this is how it plays out. This is BOEM's process. We are way over here, Oregon is. We haven't even initiated a call area, and we like that. We would like to inform what that would look like, we being the coast, the people who live here, and those interests, so that we've already been able to shape it before it goes forward. The reactions to this process as it has been playing out on the East Coast, the national fishermen over here, you can see their statements. And this more recently, this was just published on the 19th of this month, and this is coming from NRDC and Surfrider about the California process. So in both of these instances, they're really underscoring the need for an organization like Ocean and this stakeholder bottoms-up approach. So our timing is perfect, actually. So what we're trying to do here is get as much information out to as many people as possible, let them know about what the process is and how they can engage, and actually move the bar on that engagement. We are challenging the status quo, and we have a simultaneous process. We call it complementary of BOEM's process. So we're not in conflict with it. They're starting top down. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're doing. We're starting bottom up. So our public engagement focus, kind of our MO, is to implement this model, do as much as we can to get the word out, and look at opportunities that we can prepare the South Coast for some shovel-ready recovery funding next steps. What would make sense for us? What do we need to set the table for more information, even if that's where we are, and in a lot of cases we are, and to increase our public and policymaker understanding of the potential values that we have for electricity resilience, reliability, and blue economy development. We've been working very hard to cultivate energy policy that will meet our coastal energy security needs. I was just on the distribution system planning with the PUC on behalf of Ocean yesterday. We are advocating for transmission and grid process developments that meet the Oregon coastal needs. We are assessing and promoting what these blue economy opportunities are, and we are advocating for those preferences and needs on behalf of the coast. And in order for us to accurately do that, we need people to talk to us. So that's what we're trying to do, and hopefully reaching out here today will help with that. And also to increase our understanding of the technology. It's emerging really, really quickly. What we've been doing is a lot of networking. We have monthly work group updates. They are webinars that are on the third Tuesday of every month. We now have 146 members that span 4 time zones that are tracking us. And we have some focus group development areas that we're really, our board has kind of divvied up amongst us, and we take the lead there. And your Commissioner Boyce is my co-chair with Societal Benefit, making sure we get as much good done here as possible. In the policy sector, I've been actively engaging at the PUC, as I said, with Department of Energy, the Governor's Office, and the Northwest Power and Conservation Council to make sure this is on their radar. These are long-term planning, and they should not be writing off the South Coast, which they were. They are not anymore. We're also scoping out potential shovel-ready recovery projects. These include county and tribal resilient critical facility microgrids for scoping and budget, environmental studies to fill the data gaps. We know there's going to be an EIS. We have a pretty good idea of what they're going to need to know out here on the coast, so let's get going with those studies. Assessing the fisheries impacts, negative and positive, because there's a lot of evidence to suggest that you basically create a new little ecosystem out there around the underside of these floating turbines. What are the carbon benefits, so we can start to market those and figure out what that differential is going to be. Environmental effects on whales and birds, seafloor topographical and bathymetric surveys, the next level of the state and regional transmission planning. And boy, I got to tell you, all of the agencies that we work with are so responsive to us. When we say at a webinar, hey, we would really like to take that PNNL study and go the next level, all of a sudden NREL is funded, and they are. So they're taking the transmission study the next level, so we've got a higher level of resolution. So again, we're not in conflict, we're definitely complementing. And regional and port economic development scenarios. I want to be able to tell you with a straight face, if in this scenario for 2 to 3 gigawatts, this is what it would practically look like for Gold Beach, for Port Orford, for Brookings, for Coos Bay. So in a nutshell, we really do believe that our coastal interests should be front and center in shaping what any of these projects look like, and very open to any comments or questions.
Commissioner Gold?
In listening to this presentation, I'm thinking, why reinvent the wheel? So how extensive are these wind turbines and the energy on the East Coast, and what effects of it has this project had on the marine life? Because I think that's really, really critical here. Mm-hmm. And having that transmission line going from here down to California, are we going to benefit from that? I'm just throwing a lot out here.
Sure, that's fine. I'll start with the East Coast development and what has been going on over there. On the East Coast, because the way that their geography is, those are all fixed wind turbines. So they're actual foundations, they're much shallower and a lot closer to the shore. They are impacting a lot of their fisheries, and that's where a lot of the pushback has been. And also in the design to figure out where the fishing fleets can be. Can they even fish within them? In terms of what the impacts to the fisheries have been, as I said, there's some evidence to suggest that there's actually a net benefit to fishing stocks by virtue of creating this ecosystem. Things grow basically around any components of the foundations and anything that's underwater. So that's an interesting question, and it's one of those, we want to know more, tell us more, absolutely. So flipping out here, these are floating turbines. We're looking at going 500 to 1,000 meters deep. In preliminary conversations with the fishing community, I understand that somewhere between 80 and 90% of our catch is at 500 meters and shallower. There's certainly a lot of catch that's out deeper than that. That's more of like the whiting fleet that's coming deeper off of shore. But we're looking at 35 to 50 miles offshore. So it's a whole different ball of wax. And in terms of answering your question about what we think about out here, about what marine ecosystem impacts there are, I've invited Sea Grant. They will be our key presenter. I think it's in November at our ocean webinar update to do just that. Give us the state of the science. Let us know what's up. Let us know what you're studying. Right now they're tracking whales and doing all kinds of neat stuff to help us connect the dots on what those impacts would be. Was there another question that I forgot?
Actually, yes. I know there's a lot of corrosion because of ocean effects. How is that going to affect all of these turbine systems?
My understanding is that they definitely designed for ocean effects. The floating turbines right now are off of the coast of Scotland. All of the offshore wind turbines are, I mean, they're all in salt water.
How long have they been in place?
Oh, that's a
years.
good question.
Years.
Yeah, the floaters are pretty new. Those are like, well, 2 years because they made it through a hurricane system.
Like Denmark and France, aren't they a 15, 20-year project?
Oh, yeah.
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 But you haven't got that corrosion question before.
I haven't had the corrosion question before.
Well,
but
I think
If-
we really need to think about that because if these have to be replaced, then we're talking big bucks. So,
yeah, I know that actually one of the design for it's a ballast basically. These things are like huge weeble wobbles that are tethered. Was to actually use concrete, which is way more resilient out there. That's an interesting one that came out of DB Western, actually, just up to the north. So as an engineer, I have a lot of the same questions and was shocked that the development community would be even contemplating investing billions of dollars in technology that they've never deployed in the Pacific Ocean, and the Pacific is not Pacific at all. So I asked for some colleagues at OSU that are leading the charge on modeling the designs that are being made for these and then the deployment to that next level into the Wave Lab. So they will be presenting next month in September to let us all know what is the state of these designs and seriously to kick the tires.
well, and what about the earthquake faults? Because we've got a lot of faults.
Yep. So when you talk about the deep sea, high voltage deep sea line, that's absolutely, that's why they have this like back of the envelope $5 billion. And they don't, nobody has come up with the answer for how to get that down to California, which is why everyone was the interest level really peaked when we heard that we can offload 3 gigs of that here without that deep sea transmission line to the south, which opens up another consideration of maybe high voltage deep sea doesn't make sense. Maybe the right thing is to get it all on land and then to recable and get it down to California terrestrially. So lots of questions. You're absolutely right. These are like 5, 15, 50-year incremental project development.
I'm one of these people that like to think ahead a bit. So.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Boyce?
Hey, thank you. Great presentation. One of the things that has really excited me about this whole thing, going back almost a year now, is when you look at onshore wind, these offshore towers, as you said, maybe even as far out as 35 miles. So we won't even see them from the shore. And then as compared to ocean energy, or wave energy, I saw a really neat presentation in Oregon State a couple of years back, maybe 3 years, and boy, it takes up a lot of room. This has, and yeah, we're a long way from even constructing any towers at this point. But the success in Europe, the success on the East Coast, gives us a lot of room for optimism. I want to give a shout out to David Petrie, of course, part of the Lower Umpqua, Sayuswala, Coos tribe, a good friend, and also I've really watched the energy of Bill Gorham from Curry County, South County, who is a marine scientist, and boy, his contributions have been great. Where I'm going with that and recognizing recognizing them, and certainly your work, Sam Schwartz as well. Oregon is behind, and you could shed a little more light on this in this whole process and working with the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management. And so I feel like our little group, not so little, but at least in this region, is making a lot of progress towards saying, hey, Oregon legislature, governor's office, we need to catch up. We need to really bring you to the table and help us in this research, and to see if this really has some long-term practical benefits, and if this can happen. I also want to thank you very much for bringing up our 3 ports here. I just, that's something that is so unique to our little county, and boy, they need every bit of recognition and assistance that they can get, and so thank you for that. I have a lot of other questions, but I don't need to go into it today, and I hope you can come back soon, and I want to give you another chance, Mr. Chair, for you to respond and whatever you might want to add to that wonderful presentation.
Thank you for that. I will say that our little group has actually changed the conversation nationally. We have been weighing in on what's occurring on the East Coast, and that has, the comments that NRDC and Surfrider posted up basically come directly from our mission statement, and where they have objections about the process in California. Surfriders actually invited Ocean to, they are organizing their own meetings on our behalf so that we can help get the word out. And in terms of the governor's office and legislators, yeah, it's really, it's hard to, and understandably so, they don't want to stick their necks out on something that's so speculative. Like there are lots of unknowns here. So really trying to pinpoint what are the next moves that need to be made that are really reasonable and responsible so that we can get some championship at a very high executive level, which is really what the development community says we need.
You've attracted some pretty impressive, and you referenced some of their incredibly, I think, impressive developers worldwide that are looking at our win and looking at our, our activity level and saying, wow, maybe we need to take a second look. So again, more reason for optimism. Is also our board, I think in January, passed a alternative energy resolution to support the work of Ocean, and just to see where this might go and answer some of those questions that you've already started answering. And yes, there'll be considerably more questions, but I think with the 2 counties and the effort, I think we've got reason for, again, lots of practical optimism. And the ports, the amount of economic development that could bring to our ports, clean industry, it's hard not to be really excited about that. Thank you again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
We have one public comment on this, David Barnes.
Okay.
I just want to ask Shannon a couple questions. Back when I heard about this in December, there was talk about an underwater cable from Coos Bay down to Humboldt Bay. You're saying that that's no longer being considered, and there's a way to bring it onshore, like off of Coos Bay maybe or something?
That's a great question. It's not that it's no longer being considered, it's just that doesn't need to happen before we develop. We can do both. Basically what we're doing is pushing for both. Let's continue to consider how in the future we could get electrons down to California market. That's a very long-term planning process. And in the meantime, look at how can we land it at the PNNL, and we'll get better data from National Renewable Energy Laboratories when they publish their report, which is, I believe, going to be in October. But they're looking about 500 megawatts in Gold Beach, 500 megawatts. It's not Coos Bay. I think they have it coming in Reedsport. Another 5 up in Newport, and then another 5 up in Astoria. So that's just like their back of the envelope, and NREL will give us better resolution on what that would look like. The idea is to use existing corridors that there are already subsea cables, so there's not additional disturbance to whatever activities occur along those corridors.
Okay, my next question is, this is essentially for what you're talking about here is essentially power for the California market, who has said that's changed?
No, that's exactly, that has changed. That's what was so exciting to me and others about the PNNL report is that's 2 to 3 gigawatts that would be used by us in Oregon.
Okay, now, currently, right here in Curry County, approximately 85% of our power is already clean power. The other 15% is due to grid ties and the fact that we get power from coal-burning plants. But we're mostly fed here by BPA, so we're at 85% already. We also have some of the cheapest electric in the world. And what you're talking about here is going to be incredibly expensive for us. And I'm not seeing the benefit to Curry County in all of this project. That's what I'm not getting at. You know, it doesn't make sense to me to have a boat leave a port in Gold Beach to go 50 miles off of Coos Bay when you have a perfectly good port in Coos Bay. So, you know, I understand trying to make it look nice, but I'm still not seeing a benefit for Curry County in all of this. And that's my concern. You know, we have a very delicate balance of marine life here. This board has sat here for years now and listened to people talk about the impacts of fisheries. We have a paid consultant that we use to talk about fisheries out here and how delicate the balance is and with the amount of fish returning. And once we lost timber, we really don't have much industry left in Curry County except for fishing and marine-based industries. And anything that could damage them, I'd really hope that this council would take serious consideration and want to see a whole lot of studies done before they were to support this in any way. And it doesn't sound like you're there yet. So it's from what you showed, you're still at the very beginning.
Exactly. So a couple of comments. Yes, as I mentioned at the beginning, absolutely, you have cheap hydro that's coming in from the northwest. However, the lines between the hydro and here are completely congested, and we have rising demand for electricity. So Bonneville Power Administration is looking at actually recabling some of those just to continue to accommodate basically a bigger pipeline of electricity that can be imported into our state and distributed to all of us. The findings of that study, they actually called it the grid value of offshore wind, because the question was, could Bonneville Power Association actually alleviate the need to upgrade its transmission system by feeding it from the west? And the answer was yes. So in that, all of our electricity comes out from there. The difference in cost, NREL is projecting that by 2035, we'll be looking at 5 to 7 cents a kilowatt hour by the time it lands on the earth. So that's why I'm really interested in these emerging energy markets that I mentioned, where we have pensioners actually in Northern Europe and the biggest energy developer in the world that are investing in that difference, so that it doesn't pass on to the ratepayers. They're investing in that because they're getting carbon credits out of that. And in terms of the transport, Coos Bay is kind of like the northern tip, and then it would go all the way down to Humboldt. So they would definitely be off the shore here. And the service that is required of these is considerable, and it does hire quite a lot of people. In terms of aquaculture and impacts to fisheries, that's exactly what we're asking for, is some better information. There's a lot of information to suggest that there's actually a net benefit to the fisheries, both in terms of creating new ecosystem for them, and when we talk about and look at what OSU's field station has been doing in terms of their aquaculture, and I don't mean penned fish stocks, that's not what I mean. I mean kelp, things like that. They actually help out with the acidification of the ocean, and in some cases can actually open up a new harvest resource for new resources. So the goal that we're looking for is there a net benefit? If they're designed well, can there be a net benefit to both our fishery stock for the fisheries that are already in play, And can we even diversify our marine harvest?
Okay, if I could, folks, maybe we can continue this conversation, but we've kind of got to roll along here if we could. So, Ms. Souza, I really appreciate you coming down. I appreciate the presentation. I'm not trying to cut anyone short, but we do have a lot to handle here today. So at this time, it was all good information, and again, I'm glad to have you here. At this time, we are going to need to take a short recess. We will reconvene at 10:10
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
a.m. Moving on with presentations 4C, Beacon Broadband powered by Coos Curry Electric Co-op. Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I want to welcome our Executive Director, Coos Curry Electric. Have you been here 2 years yet?
Getting on to 2 years, more than a year and a half.
Well, you employ 65 people, and you run, it's one of the best managed programs I've seen in a long time, and it's been very good for Curry County. And I met Paul at a USDA meeting with a couple of fellows that were anxious to see how they could help your program, and so the whole broadband concept for schools and small companies wanting to move here and work from home and all the above. It's I know you got some real serious work cut out for you, but I think you and your board have made very good decisions, and hiring Mr. Reckenzone is one of those decisions. Thank you very much for being here today and letting the Curry County citizens know what you're up to and the path you're following towards the broadband services. Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
You're welcome. Let me just give just a real brief introduction to Paul and introduction to our efforts at Coos Curry Electric investigating a broadband project. All of that started about 6 months before I came on board here, so a little over 2 years ago. And what we're finding across the nation is that in rural areas where investor-owned broadband companies don't go out and serve those areas, that electric cooperatives are becoming kind of the provider of last resort there. And so we look at our membership and seek to serve them with whatever utilities they need and deem essential. And so we investigated the need here in Coos and Curry counties in our service territory and find that there is, particularly in the rural areas, an absolute need for quality broadband service. So in our investigation, we have brought Paul Reckenzone in. He's got a career's worth of planning, construction, and operations in the fiber optic broadband world, and he's been a tremendous asset for us as we investigate that. And so I'll give the microphone to Paul and give him the opportunity to work through his presentation, and excited to have the opportunity to meet with all of you today and give basically an introduction to the county as to what our project looks like to date.
If I may, could I impose and just ask you to give the board and the Curry citizens just a brief background that you have? I mean, I read the article on you 2 years ago, and I'm going, wow, welcome. This guy is, just tell us
Sure,
about your submarine. And
yes, I'll just go backwards in my career history. So I spent 2 years managing the engineering department at Grant PUD in Central Washington. They've got 2 powerhouses there on the Columbia River. Prior to that, I was the general manager at Skamania County PUD in the Columbia River Gorge there in south central Washington. And then about 10 years at the Bonneville Power Administration, working in their transmission, field services, and engineering departments. And then prior to that, a nuclear submariner in our own U.S. Navy. So that's kind of the thumbnail sketch of my career, and just real excited. I grew up here in the Northwest, primarily in eastern Washington, but I love the Northwest, and I love hydroelectric power, and I'm excited to be here in rural Coos and Curry County and be able to say that we serve you with 85% clean, renewable hydroelectric power and another 10% nearly of clean energy coming from the Columbia Generating Station there in Central Washington.
Thanks for being here today.
You're welcome.
I'll send you that picture of you and Secretary of State Bradbury. I don't know if I ever sent you that, but it turned out really well.
Oh, good.
You and Mr. Knudsen.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here, commissioners, staff, and citizens. I have a great love for broadband, and I've grown to have a great love for electrical cooperatives as well. My history has not been with electrical cooperatives, but rather the bulk of my work has been with municipalities and with other broadband providers. And so it's been exciting for me to be here, and it's exciting for me to have the opportunity to present to you a first look at what we're trying to do at Coos Curry Electric Cooperative in regards to broadband. Now, you'll see on my slides that I have a logo and a name for our company that we have created. We have created Beacon Broadband as a test case. And part of what we're doing today with you, and I'm looking forward to your feedback, part of what we're doing today is throwing out some messages that we're practicing and working on. And hopefully we'll get some feedback from you, and you'll be able to tell us if this is something that looks right to you or feels right to you. As of today, the cooperative is still in the process of making the decision as to whether we're going to do broadband or not. And it is in large part dependent on some federal funding and some other of the parameters that we have to get in line in order to make this a viable project. And so if I say anything today that makes you believe that that the cooperative has 100% committed to build this project, take into consideration this caveat that I'm giving you, this disclaimer I'm giving you right at the beginning, that we are planning it and we are hoping to do it, but it is not a final decision yet. So the first thing that I would like to share with you is some of the aspects as to why we want to do broadband. The technology, for me, the technology is really, really cool. To bring fiber optics to everybody's house, that is just an exciting thing. To talk about how we can split that light signal and make it work for multiple residents on a single fiber. But that's not what people want. What people want is a safe harbor on the internet, a place where you can go and know that you are being taken care of. And the technologies that we're going to be implementing will include parental controls and will include content filtering for the internet that will be configurable by the end users. And so we will be creating a safe harbor on the internet. People want to get away from the frustrating experience that they feel with broadband providers today. I don't know how many of you are using other broadband providers that are in the region right now, and how many of you have ever had to call them on the telephone. But I get reports on a regular basis of how frustrating that experience can be. And we want to make sure that we're providing freedom from that frustrating experience. We want to do this project because of the economic vitality that we believe that it can bring into the region. In part because of the construction projects that we're going to do, and in part because of the expanded access to broadband that we're going to bring, and in part because of the people that we're going to hire to make it happen. So we believe we will be increasing economic vitality. We believe that I believe that I never want to see another school bus refitted as a Wi-Fi hotspot in order for students to learn. I believe that we should be able to get broadband to homes and to businesses so that students can learn no matter what the conditions in the world are. We are wanting to create great business opportunities. We are wanting to create more opportunities for social interaction. We are wanting to be a beacon to all those things, and we are wanting to be Beacon Broadband. Was that a good sales pitch? That whole beacon, tying that beacon thing in? That's something that I've been practicing.
I just want to know how much.
I'll show you a slide on that here pretty soon. That went backwards instead of forwards. Let me see. There we are. So part of what we want to do is bring the high-speed internet experience where no one else will go. This map represents what the Oregon Broadband Mapping Project thinks broadband looks like on the south coast of Oregon. Now, mind you, they misunderstand. Those of us who live here understand that just because one address in a census group, in a census block, is served by broadband doesn't mean that that entire area is served by broadband. So the darker areas on this map are supposed to represent better broadband, but we know that it's not nearly as good as this. We know that nearly 70% of our residents do have access to reasonably good broadband. Maybe even as many as 80. As we've done different studies, we've come into the numbers between 70 and 80%. But, and for some of the incumbent providers, they say, we're doing great work. We've got 70, maybe 80% of the territory covered. 70 to maybe 80% of the people can get broadband. Aren't we doing good? And we don't believe that's nearly good enough. We believe that all of our residents, all of the members of our counties deserve to have an equitable chance to have education opportunities and work from home opportunities. They deserve the same chances. Just because you're on the wrong side of the street doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to do your homework at night. And so 70 to 80% isn't good enough for us. We want to reach out to everybody. We want to bring the high-speed fiber internet experience where no one else will go. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. We understand that we've got a huge hurdle for us to overcome. And that's, but we're dedicated to it. Here, this is the fun technology slide. Mostly I want to talk about the experience, but this slide, I just like the representation of the pictures. If you think about a standard dial-up.
Is that you second from the left there?
That's Jeff Fishburne that's my friend Jeff Fishburne. That's actually his hand. He will never be a hand model because you look at that meaty paw, it's not going to be him. But a standard dial-up connection represents just like a standard drinking straw. And these pipe sizes are relatively accurate in scale to what we're trying to do. A standard DSL connection is the size of a big fat drinking straw. You know, hoorah, it's much better than the skinny straw. But with cable and the immediate implementation of fiber, you can see the cable is represented by the pipe on Jeff's shoulder there. You can see the little DSL pipe in his hand there still. And then the typical fiber connection is the connection that you see on the ground there. Now, the current technology that we have for fiber distribution can provide bandwidth that is comparable to a pipe 50 feet in diameter. So compare that to the drinking straws we're used to, or even the under-street culverts that we're using today. We can deliver 50 feet today. The theoretical capacity, as the lasers continue to improve and as the ability to use multiple light waves continues to improve, the theoretical capacity of a single strand of fiber in this analogy would require a pipe the size of the Hoover Dam to represent it. So when we talk about building fiber optics, we talk about a huge capital investment that we're talking about making. And the risk of that capital investment is, well, how soon will the technology, the demand, outpace that investment? Well, the theoretical capacity is probably never. Now, I say probably, I would put that caveat on there, probably never. We're excited about people using bandwidth, and we want people to use more and more and more bandwidth. We want your smart homes to be functional. We want your educational opportunities to be functional. We want your seasonal residents to be able to watch and monitor their properties from wherever they are in the world. We want bandwidth to be used. So if we can ever use up the capacity of the Hoover Dam, well, by gum, we'll build some more fiber. That's how we'll solve that problem. Here's some of the general statistics. I know this is a wall of words right here. I understand that. But some of the things that we're looking at, we're planning on approximately 1,400 miles of fiber through Curry and Coos counties to reach out where no one else will go. That includes building in the more urbanized areas where other projects already are. We do need to balance some urbanized development with the very rural development. We get a lot better revenue per dollar spent in capital expenditures in the more urbanized areas, and we'll be using some of that revenue to subsidize some of the more rural areas. We're targeting about 18,000 addresses passed. You might be scratching your head and going, well, wait, there's only 14,000 members of the Coos-Curry Electric Cooperative. How are you going to get to 18,000 addresses? Up in Coos County, we will be expanding a little bit beyond our borders of the electric service territory. So we will be planning on about 18,000 addresses passed. We believe that our capital expenditures, and we've modeled this a number of different ways, and I have a much more precise number than we believe our capital expenditures will be about $60 million. But we believe our capital expenditures will be about $60 million. It's a huge nut to crack, and that's why the federal funding that we're pursuing right now is so important. And we believe we'll have about a 3-year construction plan. How much will it cost? We will be offering the fastest internet, 100 megabits, about $55, 400 megabits, about $75, a gigabit product for about $120 a month. We will be offering, because we know that there are some fixed income households and low income households, we will be offering subsidized services for those who need it. So we will have lower cost products as well. We'll be offering the most voice features. People say, why do you even bother to do voice? All my voice is right here. But when you look at the list of features, I got halfway through the list of features that will be available on our voice product, and I gave up and just said, and more and more and more. Because the voice features that will be available on our landline voice will be phenomenal. And we'll be having a streaming service that offers the best of streaming and broadcast video. One of the asks that I have for you today is I need your help as the county, helping me get the public access station onto our video system so that when we launch, we have that public access station available to all of our subscribers. For community impacts, fiber service makes homes more valuable. There's a study that I have a lot of skepticism of that says it adds $3,000 to $5,000 of value to your home. Now, regardless of whether it adds that value to your home or not, it most certainly makes your home more marketable. It is a question that people ask today, does this home have access to broadband? And if the answer is no, many people won't even look at it any further. It doesn't matter how inexpensive the house is. Fiber service makes long-term seasonal stays more viable. I was working a project in Colorado outside of the Denver area. We were up in Park County, and they have a huge number of weekend homes, second homes that people from the Denver metropolitan area come up to on the weekend. And after we built fiber into that neighborhood, they had a whole bunch of month-long homes where people would come, instead of just staying for the weekend, they would come up and stay for the month. And I believe that our seasonal homes will have a significant longer stays. We will create at least 17 direct jobs. Our organizational structure has 17 positions in it right now as we grow this project. In addition to those 17 local jobs, we'll be creating a huge number of secondary jobs, the support infrastructure, and just the opportunities that the economic viability to growth from the additional broadband availability. We're going to have a local hire requirement for our construction vendors so that we ensure that we create local jobs for the construction process as well. And the southern coast of Oregon will become one of the most connected places in the nation when we complete this project. We will become a haven for those people who are in the location-independent workforce. And so we're really excited about the community impacts that we can have with our project as well, in addition to being really excited about the fact that it's fiber and it's one of the coolest technologies out there. We're here. We're a local company. We're a local company who has looked out across Coos and Curry County and recognized that there is a need, and we want to help meet that need. We have a plan. We've been working for a couple of years to make sure that we've done feasibility studies, to identify some funding sources, to identify risks and mitigation measures for those risks, to identify marketing strategies that we have begun testing in front of boards of commissioners. Oh, that's right now. And now we need you. We need we need you, we need the citizens, we need the potential subscribers, we need the support that you can give us, we need your advice and your guidance, we need your help. One of the things that we're going to do, as we were looking through doing all of our doing our feasibility studies, we bumped up across the question of what about our easements? And we look at our easement documents, and we find that our easement documents allow us to do telecommunications in support of electricity transmission and distribution. And we had a legal advisor tell us, well, yeah, that's good enough. You can get away with that. But we're not going to do that. We're not going to try to get away with things. And so we're going to be updating all of our easements, and that's going to come at a heavy burden to the county because that's going to be a lot of recording that's going to get done. And so we need to work with you. We need your advice and your counsel as to how best to accomplish the tasks that we've got in front of us without creating an environment that is that just creates such a heavy burden on the county that you just want to kick us out. That's my presentation, Commissioners. I'm available to answer questions. I imagine Brent would be happy to answer any questions. Jim, we'll let you answer questions too if you want to.
We have Commissioner Boyce.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned we're certainly wanting to bring Clerk Cullen into the process on the easement issue, and I want to say the board's not afraid of hard work, and I think there'll be a recognition of how important this is. I know several of your board members, and sometimes board members they follow, but they don't really be engaged. But with your chairman John Herzog and certainly Jim Cullen, they are really researching this, and I'm of course that helps me understand because I know them. How the county might be able to really assist you here. I often say the Curry County, and I think it's quite true, is the most rugged part of the entire western U.S. And when I have duties in Salem, I whine to my fellow commissioners and state reps, et cetera, hey, the west of Cascade, Curry County has to travel further than any other county to get to the capital. So somehow over the years, and I think you, in one of our previous conversations, Paul, you mentioned, well, we're going to turn that to our advantage. And I think that is part of this process, that distance and that isolation. Some even say a frontier, So another project to be excited about. We didn't mean to have you and Ocean Energy here the same day, just kind of worked out that way. But so grateful that you and Executive Director Bischoff wanted to offer this, and you just sent a good message out to the citizens. I hope it generates a lot of questions and input and interest, and I think it will. And we can talk about the Ziply process if you want. Maybe no need. It's up to you. But I think our board will be very anxious to see how we can participate and get to know your board better and all of your efforts. Thank you.
Commissioner Gold.
I've got a couple of questions.
He had a comment there.
I just, to address we're excited that Ziply wants to build. Anything that happens to improve broadband in this region, we're excited about it. We don't have a lot of hope that they understand our region as well as we do. We're here, we live here, this is us. And we have a better understanding, we believe, of the needs in the more rural areas. And so we praise and laud Ziply's efforts, and we hope them the best of success, and we're going to beat them in the market every day and Sunday, twice on Sunday. Thank you, Commissioners.
Commissioner Gold.
A couple of questions. How competitive will you be with existing providers?
So one of the things that we've done, you saw the prices that were listed there, and the prices listed there are they beat the regular prices of the current providers for higher bandwidth service than what they're offering at those same prices. They right now can beat our prices with their promotions. But part of the frustration that we find in the marketplace is that people, they get up to the end of that year, their bill all of a sudden goes up, they try to contact the current provider, and it is just an incredibly frustrating experience. So what we're trying to do is hew a path that meets our financial obligations and falls in between our competitors' promotional rates and their regular rates.
So are there any other companies right now
So the two primary competitors that we have in the marketplace right now in Curry County are Charter Spectrum with their cable broadband system, which at some point they will run out of capacity on the copper that they offer. And we are offering a competitive dollar amount for much higher capacity and broader spectrum of services. The other competitor that we have does not have fiber in the area at all right now. They cannot offer a product even comparable to we offer, and that is Ziply Fiber. They recently acquired the Frontier Communications assets. So what they provide right now is mostly DSL, and that's not even a really comparable product.
Okay, and one last comment, I'm going to be the devil's advocate.
Great.
I've been around here long enough to remember when Bruce Curry put forth satellite TV, and it was a dismal failure. So I'm just kind of wary sometimes. Comment.
I'd just like to respond to that. I had an interesting opportunity to visit with one of my counterparts who manages, I think it's Columbia River PUD right now, or Clatskanie PUD. His name is Mark Farmer, and he used to be the manager for Coos Curry Electric's satellite service. And he informed me that when they were managing that, they were a very well-run and profitable organization, and then Coos Curry Electric decided it was time to move away from that, and basically the board gave the directive to management to go ahead and liquidate that asset, and management didn't do the greatest job of doing that, and so it ended up costing Coos Curry Electric some in doing that, and so it was not that satellite service was not a successful project. It was how Coos Curry Electric exited from that was not successful.
I just remember the echo. So.
Yeah.
Mr. Bishop, first of all, I would like to commend you for your handling of Coos Curry Electric.
Thank you.
And the co-op. You do a really great job, sir. And I know you get a lot of stink sometimes, but every now and then there's a flower. So I'd like to commend you for your work there. It's a very, very well-run co-op, and Curry citizens appreciate it. I have a couple of questions. I, for one, and I won't name the name of the company, but I have a satellite television provider that I use, and I would gladly, lovingly give it back to them at a moment's notice and go to something like this. Through conversations that I've had with NACO, have you contacted NACO and worked with them to help have them as a lead in assisting you for federal dollars? They came up a year and a half ago with what's called the Tested app. I don't know if you're familiar with the Tested app. It was launched through NACO, and it was for, I've actually presented it to the public here several times. It's an app that you can put on your phone, and the federal government wanted to prove that a lot of rural counties weren't getting serviced, as the map you showed, because they had one good signal in that area. They could say, well, we service this area, and it's not true. So they came up with an app. It's called Test It, and they gave it to the public, and they would go out, and no matter where you were, you could touch that app, and it would send a text message to the app provider saying exactly what the broadband was in that location, and it was used millions of times in the last couple of years, and so the federal government is now able to help hold these providers' feet to the fire a little bit harder. So you may find some support with NACO, and I could introduce you to some people there that you may want to contact to help get those federal dollars out here into rural Oregon, and maybe just another voice that could stand at a committee meeting and say, you know, I know these people, and I think there'd be a worthy source for this funding. So just that thought. My only other thought was, with the advent of 5G, do you see conflicts with that? Do you see a real competitive market with that? I'm guessing your services will be a lot cheaper than 5G, but I just wonder if you guys have looked into that and the competitive nature of that.
You bet, absolutely. And 5G is primarily a cell phone data technology, and that's the intent of it, just like 4G and LTE are today. And they don't necessarily replace broadband internet service, and many people subscribe to both. And so the one thing that will happen is if, as we move forward with a fiber project and we have a fiber optic network across our county, it will provide an opportunity for 5G to come here because they will have access to fiber. 5G is a cell phone technology that is, it's a higher frequency, and so therefore it doesn't have the ability to travel as far a distance or to penetrate through the vegetation and so forth that we have here. So it requires a higher density of cell phone towers, more towers, to serve a given geographic area. So a beacon broadband fiber optic network would provide the opportunity for these cellular 5G providers to then build the necessary towers in our service territory that would then provide or give the opportunity to provide 5G internet or 5G cellular service here in our local area. So there's more synergy opportunity there than there is concern that 5G is going to come in and make a fiber infrastructure obsolete.
One more thing I had, new construction, to be able to add, an optic line into new construction is going to be inexpensive and easy. But for houses that are already developed, areas that are already developed, and I'm thinking about the rural road that I live on, where do you see the cost in putting, an optic line into already developed homes to the homeowner? What kind of cost do you see? Have you looked into that yet? And how are we even going to approach that?
Right. As far as so, let me see if I understand correctly. Your question is, what is the installation cost going to be to the
Basically,
individual
yes.
homeowner?
Like for me, for Spectrum, Charter Spectrum, their trunk ends right on my property.
Right.
I asked him what it would cost me to extend that trunk up to my property, and it was a new car, basically.
Yeah. Yep. And so our model, as we've developed it today, requires no upfront fees for the individual homeowner, whether they're a rural homeowner that is at the end of a quarter-mile-long gravel driveway, or whether they are in town and their services is coming in. So it may be that folks in town that are in a subdivision where all of their service is underground, their electric service is underground, then we will be installing the fiber optic underground and providing that to them. But our business model has been developed so that we are not requiring a large upfront capital expenditure by the individual. That's all built into the model.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. That's all I have. Commissioner Boyce?
We've talked about funding over the last few months. I assume we're not counting heavily on any state funding. Is that fair to say?
We're seeking any opportunities for state funding that we can, but we don't expect large amounts of state funding. There may be some small amounts and some opportunities, but not a significant funding opportunity.
So we've got to know USDA Regional Director, Rural Development Director for the state that President Trump appointed about 2.5 years ago, and boy, he's a really good resource, and I think he wants, as you know, he really wants to help. John Huffman used to serve in the legislature, and so, and his right-hand guy, John Holman. So we'll just keep up on that, and any other way that we as a board can help you with economic development or whatever sources you might need to be looking at there. I'm sure you already spent quite a bit of time on that. Just let us know how we can help.
Very good. Thank you. And
I also want to give a shout out to Dave Itzen, former commissioner. He spent a lot of time in this. He was a one-term commissioner, but has a lot of background, a lot of interest. He's a great resource, and I've connected you all with him, and he's just a super guy. So thank you again.
We'll plan in the future here to be reaching out to Julie and others to see how we can coordinate our projects and where we can find synergies there.
Perfect. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
To everybody in Coquille High.
All right, next we have 4D, fire prevention measures at Lobster Creek. Mr. Durock, Parks Coordinator. Good morning, sir.
Anthony Durock, Parks Coordinator for Curry County. Good morning, Commissioners. Sorry.
Anthony, can you remove your mask? It's just a little hard to hear you with the mask on.
I can't see.
Same screen. There you go.
This one?
And show, yep. Go up, right there, yep. And then go up in the right-hand corner and click the X. There you go. Nope.
Right here?
Yep.
Sorry about that. Now, should be able to.
What a view one.
Yeah. Okay, view tools. Slideshow. So how do I,
Try full screen mode.
where do you see that?
Two
I'm
lines
sorry, this is
down.
an
Two,
angle and I
two
have-
lines down.
Excuse me, full screen mode, there we go. There's a
And
glare.
then I think
from
if you,
the
I think if you just tab.
There we
then-
go.
Yeah, then just
Yeah.
tap the right mouse click to move it
Yeah.
forward.
No, there was a glare I couldn't see. So yeah, this is just a,
Hey, guys, excuse me 1 second. Thank you. Jess, going to keep it down a little, please? I can do that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Durant.
no, it's fine. This is just a brief overview. This was put together last night. It doesn't by any means cover everything. It's just kind of an update. This is Lobster Creek Camp, fire mitigation and safety updates. Oh, sorry about that. I've been in contact with Coos Forest, with Mr. Boggs, Derwin Boggs. We were talking about obtaining a 1,000-gallon water bladder to put up at Lobster Camp, just for fire prevention, to have it on site, to have that accessibility to the water. I'm in the process of obtaining one of these fire level signs that we're going to put at the top of the road prior to the gate to indicate what level we're currently at so the guests are aware when they arrive. I've also posted this sign I got from Mr. Boggs as well, pertaining to no fires. I've included numerous fire restrictions. Sorry with this hand. I've posted numerous signage relating to fire restrictions, ordinances, things of that nature, full descriptions of every level, depending on where we're at. I've designated a smoking area as recommended by Mr. Boggs. You know, with the heightened fire conditions, it states in those descriptions about, you know, no smoking anywhere except for in your vehicle, things of that nature, unless designated smoking areas. So I designated some of those up there so there was no confusion. There's also some COVID-related material that's posted on the board as well. I've been in contact with CNS, Fire and Safe Services. They're going to be coming out and recertifying all of our fire extinguishers next month. There was some signage missing, so I created and posted some signage pertaining to the fire extinguishers. Majority of them are the ABC fire extinguishers, and that signage gives full description of what that means and what they can potentially put out. There was, you know, some safety hazards. This, as I mentioned earlier, this presentation does not by any means cover all things safety related that were done out there, but just brief with fire, things of that nature, you know, accessibility in and out of the property. You would be exposed to safety handrails amongst, you know, said issues. So there's before when the boards were replaced and then after when they were painted. Just an example, I don't have the actual before photos because I personally don't feel it would have been appropriate to provide or show the previous conditions of quite a few things. This is one of the things that I felt was borderline able to show. This is the propane tank adjacent of the nurse's cabin, and it's kind of hard to see in the photos, but they were on blocks, barely hanging on, and this is a fairly large tank. I don't know the gallon size, but I simply just stabilized it, leveled it, stabilized it. That's a safety concern in my opinion. Could also be a fire hazard as well. There was an ongoing issue long before my arrival with a water leak up at Lobster Creek, and that has now been repaired. So new valves, new lines, new box cover, things of that nature. You know, water is quite important, especially with fires going on. You know, if there's a leak in the line and you can't maintain water in the holding tank and you go to use a hose on one of the buildings to put out said fire and there's no water coming out because there's no water in the tank, that's, you know, could create a huge problem. Working with the road department, the roadmaster, Mr. Christensen, with having these road repairs done. There's a few issues with the roads, and he was out there yesterday, and we evaluated the roads, and amongst other things, he said it will not be a problem whatsoever to make these repairs, and there was also additional talk of potential other work that could be done as well. We'll take that as it goes, but as of right now, we were talking of a timeline around to have the work done potentially in October, so not too far away. And that's, you know, to maintain safe access, you know, to in and out of the property, and also for, say, if needed be, fire department, emergency services, anything of that nature. And then I've coordinated fire prevention with the juvenile department with Mr. Summer Whalen. Previously, he's gone up there and brought some of his juvenile kids up there, and we have removed fire fuels, a lot of down limbs in the road, on the side of the roads, quite a bit of cleanup, and also this was in the beginning of my hire, and the grass in the field and amongst the property was at, I would assume, an all-time high. It was quite the hazard and quite the amount of work that was out there. And he had stepped in and brought some guys out there to help as well. And then I'm also in the process, these first aid boxes are on order, and they come fully stocked. So they're the large size, and I'm going to be putting one at Lobster and also out at Boys Cove. And I'm ordering these Sharps containers. People, you know, diabetic, things of that nature, and they can also pose a problem if you don't have them. People can tend to potentially use said needle and try to flush it down the toilet, which can cause, you know, other sanitary and plumbing, septic issues amongst many others. But I just feel that it could be helpful whether they are used or not. We, you know, potentially have it there for the possibility, and also for the safety of children that might be amongst the property, or if I'm on the property with my guys and we come across a needle somewhere within the park or area, we can dispose of it properly. That is the last slide. I did also want to mention that I have been in contact with Public Health Services, Sherry Ward, with COVID-related issues, regulations, requirements, and also obtaining some hand sanitizer to provide to camp hosts and things of that nature, and also myself and employees. I've been in contact with Emergency Services, Jeremy Dumeyer, where he's actually going to come out to Lobster tomorrow. And we've been in contact about the water bladder and also communication, figuring out how to get some communications up at Lobster, because that's a huge issue, and it's a safety concern as well, because the only service is barely up at the gate, and if you go out to the service road to a certain pullout, you can gain some reception as well. I've also been in contact with Veterans Services, Mr. Vowdy, about potentially obtaining a defibrillator to look at maybe having those at both parks as well, just as a safety protocol, just in case kind of type of situation. And that's about what I have.
Excuse me. I have one thing that I'd like to comment on. Looking at those pictures, kudos for putting that propane tank back on its feet. But I think, in my opinion, you should go farther with that and possibly put some actual footings underneath that.
Yeah.
That are
yeah.
stable.
Yeah.
Those concrete blocks, we get a little tremor, something hits that, it's coming right back off, where if you were to put some footings under it and bolt it down into them, strap it to it, then it's not going to move. But looking at those pictures, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it was the way it was previously. That, like I said, I can even go back to it. So I had stabilized the propane tank. I wasn't insinuating that it was a permanent fix. It was, a temporary fix to what I saw being a huge hazard issue problem. So I temporarily went out and obtained some concrete blocks, things of that nature, to stabilize and level the tank. That way it's not going to just fall off of these high platforms. These platforms were actually sunk into the ground, and it seemed like it had, there's moss and everything growing on it. They've been like that for quite some time. And I was actually pretty surprised that it hadn't been dealt with much sooner, especially if, not trying to name any names, but if, the company was coming to fill said propane tank and, visually saw that situation, you would think they would be obligated to potentially fix said issue.
Is that feral gas, do you know?
I could not tell you that information at the
Whoever the
moment.
filler is of that, though, I know propane tanks are supposed to be inspected. I think it's every 3 or every 5 years they have to re-inspect them to make sure that there's no rust and corrosion that could, they could explode. So I don't know when the inspection sticker is on that. I know they just came and inspected mine about 6 months ago. So I don't know the timeline. I know feral gas demands it. I don't know if there's a different company for this.
I'll definitely look. I know I have looked previously, but as you can see from some of the pictures, some of the verbiage and signage is literally peeling off of the tank. I have inspected the valves and things of that nature up top underneath the cover. So most of the covers aren't even secured, things like that.
No, but what I'm saying is they actually have to come and scrape them down to nothing, inspect them, and then they repaint them.
Okay.
So or replace them is what they do. Commissioner Boyce?
I'll pass for now, thank you.
I just have one comment. I'm looking at these pictures versus what pictures were shown to us when Director Schmelzer was showing us Lobster Creek Park, and I've got to say there is a vast improvement.
Thank you.
Was shown us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks for your work.
And as I mentioned, this was kind of put together last night. These pictures weren't specifically intended to be presented. So that's, the incorrect angles and things of that nature. They're not the clearest photos. It's just what I've already had on my cell phone, just, for reference to myself, mainly.
Tony, I have a question. So you're putting these first aid kits out there. Did we never have first aid kits in our parks?
See, that goes back to what I mentioned previously, to not having, intentionally not having before photos, thinking that said information I don't believe would be appropriate to provide to the public. I think it would almost be an embarrassment. I take pride in the parks, and I would not feel comfortable showing them in those conditions that they were previously. So, as I had mentioned, I don't tend to take before photos. I will take photos of after.
Well, and I respect you don't want to make anyone look bad. That's
Yes.
great, but I am surprised that we didn't have some of that stuff in place, so kudos to you.
There was one small one at Lobster in a locked maintenance shed that was hanging on by one screw.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Boyce?
Well, thank you. First, I want the board to know that Duran Boggs contacted me and said, hey, you want to make a trip to Lobster Creek? We'd like to put I thought he said 500-gallon bladder, and so if it's 1,000, that's even better. Says, I said, I was up there last April, and I don't need to go back. What are you up to? And he says, well, we've got the program to offer the county, if you think it's a good idea, this bladder for firefighting. Of course, you know, Council Huddle can tell you the experience we had in the mediation in Newport. And so I said, yeah, you need to contact Mr. DeRock. So that's how the process went down because of the work I've done with CFPA over the years. So Commissioner Gold referenced back to Director Schmelzer's presentation. I think it was back in February, how horrible the conditions were. She softened it a little bit, but we all knew what she was talking about. This is never anything, this property is never anything, in my view, that we're going to recover our expenses and make it a profitable program. You've heard Mr. DeRock mention hazards. You've heard him mention, well, just take a look at this. The propane tanks, well, even if they're on a great foundation, they are old tanks. I can tell you. And if we're coaching people up there, guests, to tell them how to turn on the generator. And I've been around gensets my whole life, and I never let my guest anywhere near a generator. It is, you talk about a hazard, you talk about a liability. It is true after the Lobster Creek fire that I started talking to myself sometimes late in the evening, what is the best thing for the county on this, considering the hazards and liability. And the fire may have tainted my attitude a little bit, but we come close to losing, as it was, we only lost $50,000, thanks to the work that Council Huddle did, or it would have been a tremendous amount of additional funds. And the one slide that Mr. DeRock showed of fire, and the fire extinguishers, thank you. We've got a summer camp, and it is an embarrassment to me, without picking on anyone here. It is an embarrassment. You have a camp, 47 acres in a beautiful location. All the cabins are in terrible shape. There are some exceptions to that rule. Back to the hazards of liabilities. We have people just go up there and stay. Are they trustworthy? You bet. Are they good citizens? The best. But when we have to say, you know, and then sometimes our staff just decides they're going to go to Lobster Creek. It's an hour and a half to check it out or whatever, and they take different vehicles, and it's an hour and a half round trip. Maybe it's very productive time. You know, no communications. You know, I mean, the list is just gigantic. And so, in view of the fact that we're not going to regain financially, and the county is really hurting financially, in fact, because we don't have a finance director, we don't know exactly where we are. And I think that's open for debate, certainly. So I've been working on this for several months, off and on, trying to understand if we can justify keeping this incredible piece of property. You know, I've been more often than not proud of my county parks, and I have promoted growing and in a responsible way. But I asked Assessor Cullen if he wouldn't mind just doing a little research, and this is what I got about 2 weeks ago, and I'll read it to the board. And I think now's the time to start this conversation. I'm not saying that we should sell it. I'm just trying to get all the information out there, even on a preliminary basis. And I want the board to say, can we justify keeping this piece of property if we can get a couple $1 million for it? Now, that may be pie in the sky, and where would that money go? Of course, to the taxing districts, how much in the way of improvements, et cetera, would the county benefit? Those questions would need to be answered, and I would need your help. We would need your help. The tax collector foreclosed on this property, the Lobster Creek Youth Camp called in those days, 1961. There are 47 point whatever acres to this property, which has very nice frontage on Lobster Creek. Boy, that's an understatement. It is beautiful. Our records do not indicate the years all the improvements were made to this property. The county has developed several buildings and a road system. I'll tell you why that's potentially significant. I do not know what year this property was made a county park. Again, this is Assessor Cullen and his work. Since this is a county park, if it is sold, I believe some of the proceeds would go to the county's parks department. Depending on what resources were used to develop the property, i.e. general fund, road fund, et cetera, the proceeds attributable to the development could revert back to the appropriate fund, ? I think this would involve a research project through commissioners' records. Also, since the county has managed the timber since 1961, any value attributable to timber appreciation since that date, 61, could go to the fund. I'm assuming he means the general fund. That would be my wish, responsible for management costs. I do not have the records, but by my perception is that the park was developed when the county had extra dollars in the general fund from O&C timber receipts. At around the same time, the county gave dollars to the cities to build city halls and develop the fish hatchery up Elk River. Boy, and that's somebody who's been in the county 30 years that could just pull that. That's awesome. If that is the case, a significant portion of potential sale proceeds might revert back to the county general fund. This likely would be a question again for council. Should the county decide to sell this property, I would recommend first getting a fee appraisal and possibly a timber appraisal. Now, I'm not advocating that we sell it to somebody and they go in and log it. We possibly could consider a sale with conditions. Maybe we want to only sell it that can be a youth camp, a place for veterans. Maybe we just wash our hands of it and put the money in a tremendous lockbox. I don't know. I just, again, want to start the conversation. I'm not saying selling it is a good idea. I don't know. But when I see these pictures, when I see the presentation in February from Director Schmelzer, you talk about nervous. We almost lost it July 1st of 2018. If the wind had been going the other way, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now because there would be nothing left there. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Schmelzer?
Well, I can say that the park is not losing money. We do not lose money on Lobster Creek. As a matter of fact, with the improvements we are making out there, we actually anticipate the use to increase to bring in more revenue. So if we're not losing money, I don't know why we would consider selling it. I also think the public would there would be a huge outcry. That has been used by, I don't know if it's fair to say thousands, but hundreds of 4-H kids. That is what I think is Curry County's gem. I think it's something that everybody, every family has connections to. And I have to be honest with you, I would be ashamed of the county if we seriously proposed selling that property. That is a gem. There is no other remote campground that I'm aware of in any county in Oregon. We finally have somebody in place that has the skills to do all the repairs and the know-how to get it marketed. And I think we need to just look what has happened in these few months, the progress that we have made out there. I'm shocked that we would even entertain that. I think if it ever was on an agenda, we'd have more than a full room of people opposing that. Mr. Durock, I think you've done a wonderful job out there. You've done something that nobody else has ever done out there.
Thank you. I
And
greatly
it's needed.
appreciate that. If I could just say a few words to what Commissioner Boyce had mentioned. He had mentioned about Mr. Boggs reaching out to me from his engagement with Mr. Boggs. I actually personally went to Mr. Derwin Boggs to speak about current fire uprise levels and conditions, and that's when Mr. Boggs had brought to my attention the possibility of bringing out a bladder. And then, as well as speaking on the property, the asset, there's local families here to Gold Beach that have been going there over 40 years, you know, and like you had said, there's countless children that have been attending that property for countless years, amongst many others that have recently rented it out and immediately made reservations for the following year. You know, so we have reservations into next year already, just from recent guests. And then it was mentioned that it was 40-something acres. To the best of my knowledge, the property is actually over 50 acres. I believe it's 52 point something. I can't state that as fact, but like I said, to the best of my knowledge, the property is over 50-something acres. It is irreplaceable. You cannot replace that property. You know, there's nothing else like it. I've personally lived coast to coast, been a lot of places in my life, and I have never seen a property like this. It is absolutely breathtaking. It is an amazing property, and we are in the process of, Mr. Commissioner Court Boyce had mentioned about some of the cabins, and these are primitive cabins. So they're, you know, bunk houses for the most part. I wouldn't exactly call them cabins. They were intended for children, for camping. Some of them aren't in the best condition, but they're all perfectly fine at the moment. But we are working towards obtaining money to potentially replace all those cabins, you know, amongst many other things to the grounds. This was not my intention with this presentation. This was clearly just a simple update and a few little safety things that have been addressed. I was not prepared to go into detail of the current condition of the property and the safety of the property. Some of the things I had mentioned and shown, these signage that I have created and posted, this was just due to the current fire restrictions. So this was posted when we've had guests there to let them know there is no fires in the fire pit. There is no barbecuing in the barbecues. So what would have been allowed is a propane grill, because you can turn that off. And then we have a full industrial professional kitchen in the A-frame that has its own complete fire extinguish system on it as well. But those are just a few of my comments.
I would just like to say, Commissioner Boyce, I'm a little surprised. When we started talking about Flores Lake and relieving that property to the State Parks Department, a lot of our conversations on that were to grow the county park system and looking at a park possibly down in Brookings, and some of the comments that were made during those negotiations were to, you know, strengthen that relationship that we had with state parks and possibly allowing them to trust us to give us that park down in Brookings Harbor area to grow that, as well as to work on some of our other parks. So I'm just a little surprised that, because I've never heard you say that you wanted to sell this park. That's never been brought up. And I'm just a little surprised to hear you say that you'd consider voting to sell this park and get rid of it. I'm just, I would like to say, from the pictures I've seen in the past to what I see now, it's much improved, and good job. Again, I can see some further safety issues there that I know you know about, and you will address.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, before something happens there, we'll get those things fixed. I'm just a little surprised that. I'm not picking on you for it. I'm just.
Well, you said surprise 4 times, if I may, and so I accept that it's okay if we have disagreement. Okay, I'm not promoting selling this. I just give you a lot of what I think is very responsible data to assess yourself to say, is this something the board should consider pursuing? I got a lot of good friends probably going to, blow up my email today. There's going to be some other people I think might go, wow, is this truly, Commissioner Boyce, where are you going to get the money to make all these improvements? I mean, I'm not even allowed to know the reservations that are in that program. And with Jay Trost, that was not an issue. And I want to get him involved in the conversation. He may say, Boyce, you're crazy. You never want to let that place go. He may say, why didn't we think of this before? I don't know. So when it comes to Flores Lake, you voted, Commissioner Pash, against the land exchange with the state. And so we have started that process, and you've brought up to the Oregon Department of Recreation, and I'm glad you have, about McVeigh Park. So that's good. That's close. That's manageable. That's not going to have a lot of travel expenses back and forth between this office and Lobster Creek. I want the public to understand, this is a liability. If we had a ton of money to correct it and could mitigate those odds, people, it's an exposure. And I don't know how else you can say anything other than, yeah, we've responded with the fire. And by the way, I know Mr. Boggs contacted me. And so that fire risk is still there. And I don't know how much it's costing us insurance. I've said enough. I mean, if the board is saying, absolutely, we're not going to entertain possibly selling this, then I, again, proudly remain in the minority to at least consider, to at least do our homework.
All right.
If I may just respond briefly to Commissioner Boyce, just in regards to your saying the funding of repairs, majority of repairs have already been done at a minimal expense, and those expenses come directly out of the park's budget. It's not out of the general fund or anything like that.
I understand.
Yeah, so you try to make it sound like where's all this money coming from? It's already being addressed at the most minimal amount possible, and the park is safe currently. I would welcome everybody to come up and see the current condition, even with the grass dying because of no rain. We'll be coming into rain here shortly, and everything will be growing again. But I welcome you to come up and look at all the outhouses, pump buildings, things of that nature, inside the A-frame nurse's cabin, things like that. Everything is definitely presentable and...
Yeah, I just had one final comment. I just want to remind the board that maybe it was about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we talked, we have some property up in Hunter Creek, and we agreed to transfer it to Parks so that it could be sold. And at that time, the discussion was when those properties are sold, those proceeds would go to repair or replace the cabins at Lobster Creek, which again shows that it wouldn't be a reliance on the general fund. By statute, if we dedicate that property to Parks, it has to be used for Parks maintenance. So we still have that plan in place. I just have not contacted the sheriff's office to put those through a sheriff's sale. But that proposal from early summer is still on the plate for us.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I have one more. Somebody needs to show me on paper, from a business standpoint, where this squares up, the amount of money is needed. I do not agree that it's safe now. Is it improved? Yeah, we've been improving it since 1961, but there are a lot of issues there. No fault of Mr. DeRox, Mr. Hopkins, or Mr. Trost, but I'm going to keep doing my research. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Could I just one more? Okay, that's enough. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Moving on to consent agenda. Number 5, minutes, 7. Guys, trying to have a meeting here, please. Consent agenda. Minutes, 7:15:20 business meeting. B, 7:22:20 business meeting. C, 8:13:20 special meeting. D, job description, facilities maintenance worker, custodian. E, reclassification of an employee, Ms. Hudgens. F, Master Payroll 2021 Amendment Number 1. G, Order approving intergovernmental agreement between Curry County, Josephine County, and State of Oregon for wastewater treatment, septic inspections. And H, OHA 2019 through 21 IGA Agreement 159808, Amendment Number 9, amended and restated.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Discussion action items. Amend the adopted fiscal year 2021 budget. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, so this is a follow-up to our earlier meeting with the Budget Committee. So what we're asking the board to do is actually adopt a resolution or approve a resolution to increase the sheriff's salary. You do have a draft resolution in your packet. I just want to let you know, based on the recommendation from the Budget Committee, we would want to amend that resolution so it reflects 7%, and that would be effective August 1st. So if you do vote to approve that right now, it would be per those amendments.
And I would also like to make sure the public is fully aware this is per Oregon law. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the budget amendment as it was amended for the sheriff's salary, 7% instead of 6%.
Second, Chair Pash.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
6B, Harbor Public Water Utility District Water Master Plan. Commissioner Gold.
Every 20 years, the Harbor Water District has to come up with a plan, a 20-year master plan, and I was sent the master plan. I don't think everybody wants to read the whole thing, but basically what they're doing...
The microphone.
Oh, I am so sorry. I've got a loud voice, but not loud enough. Okay, so every 20 years, they have to update their 20-year master plan. And some of the main things that they're going to be doing, they are going to be extending their water rights, which are pretty much at their capacity. And so they were required to submit an updated water conservation management plan. And what I've done here is copied Section 5, which includes this conservation plan. So all of you have a copy of that. I also reached out to Rich Christensen to read this over to make sure it would not be impacting the projected road plans. So they'd have to be sawing up roads and so forth. And he said that the plan was just fine. And Julie read through the whole thing, Ms. Schmelzer. Did you have any comments regarding it?
I didn't, actually. I didn't see anywhere that it commits the county to anything. It's, I'm actually really grateful that they're taking it on because it serves a large portion of our population.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see anything in there that would be of concern to the county that would commit us to funding or anything like that.
And that's what I saw also. So I would propose a motion to adopt this plan so they can move forward with it.
Second on the harbor water.
You're going to make the motion.
Huh?
You're making the motion, Commissioner?
Yes.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next is 6C, NeoGov Software Program. Ms. Schmelzer.
Yes, so we did budget, we had there was a small group that looked at this last year, but then we did budget $60,000 in the budget for this HR software package. What it is it's half that cost, it's $30,000. And then annually it would be $25,000 if we went with it. But what this is it's basically an HR software program. It helps market our properties, or I'm sorry, not our properties, our job ads out to a larger network. It also has some automated things in there to make sure people are getting notices of job alerts, or managers are knowing when somebody's applying for a job. It's filtering out job applications that don't meet our requirements. It also has a second feature in there which alerts managers when an employee needs to do something. Maybe their safety training is due or something, or maybe their evaluations are due. What it does is it streamlines the process. It makes sure we're doing legally and professionally what we should be doing. It helps keep us out of trouble. One of the things I like is we do know that our staff isn't going to be here forever. You know, they've already talked about possibly retiring in the near future. So what this can do is actually serve some of that role, so we don't have to invest as much in staff in the future. We did have a workshop on this. I did not have any negative feedback after the workshop.
Mr. Gold?
I just had one question. I know that we have to pay for ads to try to get employees. How much do we spend on that, or do you have any idea?
Well, it depends on the position, and it depends what they advertise for. For example, I know with the finance director position, this spring we spent a couple $1,000s advertising for a finance director. We ran some ads. We ran, don't quote me on it, I want to say maybe it was $4,000, $6,000.
Total, may I ask?
I believe that was
Close
total,
enough.
yeah.
Sure, thank
yeah.
you.
And then with the replacement for my position, we did minimal. But, you know, we did consider putting it on ICMA, the International City County Managers Association, because that's where most managers look for jobs. But we didn't have the funding to put it on there. So you're going to save that money, but it is going to be through this program. This program markets the jobs with something called governmentjobs.com. And I just have a note here, as you see in the promo stuff. It's 177% more likely to deliver a qualified hire than Indeed, and we do advertise on Indeed. And it's 67% more likely than on LinkedIn. We do not even advertise on LinkedIn, as far as I know. Or maybe we might do some positions, but not. I don't think we do many of them.
So it sounds like it would be more efficient in the long run, and also in the long run probably save us money. Okay.
Definitely,
Thank
yeah.
you.
My question, if we were to approve this, because as you know, we have a couple of positions right now that we're looking, how soon could it be implemented and that position be put up, your position, be put up online?
I don't have that answer for you, because what we normally do is we discuss it, and then if the board agrees to it, we then bring the contract back at the next position, or the next meeting. So I would have to research that to find out if we pass a contract September 2nd, which is our next meeting, how soon can they get going and get the
That would be
advertisements
interesting
out
for
there?
me to know. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You just said 2 positions open. I'm only aware of 1. What am I missing here?
I said what?
2 positions that we're looking for right now? I'm only aware of 1, but I could easily be mistaken.
I know of a couple of people that are getting ready to retire. There's one right there.
Oh, I didn't know we were advertising. I thought that's what you were referencing. Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
I'm just saying, in the very near future, we're going to have several people, I believe, that are going to be looking to...
Well, what you said was there's 2 positions open. Maybe I misheard, but that's why I asked you the question, because I'm only aware of 1. So no worries. No
Well,
worries.
actually, right now, we have a finance director's position open if you want to separate them out, and we have a, because Ms. Schmelzer's kind of an anomaly. I consider her an anomaly. We have a finance director's position open, and we have a director of operations position open, if you were to separate the 2 out. I wasn't doing that in what I said.
We do have other job applications. We do have other job openings right now. They're actually posted on the wall outside my office.
I think we have 7 total.
Thank you.
County positions
But we
open.
do not have a separate finance director position available that we are putting out there for the public to
That's correct.
looking for applicants.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
We tried that, and we had 0 applicants. So that's why we revised it.
But I have a possible plan.
Well, when we thought we were going to hear that today, but you pulled it today, correct? Last week, We pulled it and you got
that,
us.
actually, that was part of it, but anyway, we could sort of talk about that, and I have information for you if you are interested.
Ms. Schmelzer, one more question. I understand through the meeting that we had the other day with OpenGov, NeoGov and OpenGov are going to be working together very closely, and some of their services will actually intertwine and work together seamlessly, from what I understand.
That's right. So NeoGov also has a third component to it, and that's the payroll component, which we're not pursuing. And I talked to, but we do have, with our OpenGov project, they do have a payroll component. So I asked them that with them taking over NeoGov, or if that goes through, will we be duplicating services or what's going on? And they said if they go through and take over the NeoGov company, they're only going to be taking over the payroll part of it. So even if they do merge, we still would need those services from NeoGov.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again. I'm just looking at the ARS Director Smelzer, and it says, about halfway down the page, says specific costs provided by the vendor are, and, oh, I'm sorry, one line above that says, moving forward, annual costs are projected at $25,000 for the two modules together. And then we have the three categories. The top and bottom one have annual licenses. I'm not understanding that. Is that something that NeoGov will include in their $25,000 annual charge?
So right now, we could get item number 1 and stop. We could get item number 2 and stop, or we could get number 3, which is the combination of 1 and 2 together. The annual license to get 1 and 2 together is a little over $25,000. And then the setup and training to get those two together is about $5,000.
I just have one more.
So moving forward, then, it would be, I mean, things go up, you know, there's always that inflation rate, but it's about $25,000 annually for the entire NeoGov package.
That really helped, thank you. Can you tell us at this point who would be specifically involved in the training of this software program?
So this is an HR package, so initially the setup would be with Julie Swift and Carrie Dexter, and then after that initial work is done, it would be opened up to training to all department heads and confidential assistants and elected officials.
So that would probably be a year down the road on the department heads, give or take?
I don't know how long it would take because we don't have that contract yet.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Something, Ms. Swift?
Julie Swift, Payroll and HR. So I thought the OpenGov, NeoGov partnership was for the HR piece, not the payroll piece.
No, I talked to them directly, and it's not official yet that they're merging
Right.
with NeoGov, but they're merging with NeoGov, and they're going to take the payroll piece, OpenGov will not take the other HR piece of
Okay,
NeoGov.
because I know when we were talking, they were talking about their HR module,
Right.
which is what we had questioned.
Yeah, and then Caitlin from OpenGov did some more research, and she did get back to us on that.
Okay. And then my other comment is we have 4 positions open on the board right now, 2 of which are just kind of residual positions in the sheriff's office. We don't have openings right now, but we will take applications. The only 2 other open positions is the public health emergency preparedness and then the finance director and director of operations combined.
Okay.
So just
Thank
wanted to
you.
clarify, we don't have 7 positions open out there.
Quick question for Ms. Swift.
We have in the past.
What's that?
We have in the past had 7 open positions, but not at the moment.
Well, thank you. That's real helpful to catch up on that. NeoGov, does that put you partially out of? Does that change your job description, responsibility over the long term, short term?
I think it would enhance my position as far as the recruiting, because they do have a wider recruitment zone as far as...
Payroll.
We're not doing.
But we're not doing the payroll piece on it right now.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
And that's, as Ms. Schmelzer said, that would be incorporated in with the OpenGov payroll, so, which we were looking at anyway.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion?
I move that we move ahead with the NeoGov software.
I'll second.
Do you need direction on which option?
Director?
Ms. Melzer has already outlined
Okay.
the two options at $30,000. I'll second. Further discussion? Roll, please.
Yes.
Vice Chair Boyce?
No?
Chair Pash?
Aye.
Motion carried 2-1.
And then you'll bring a contract back to us?
I'll try and
so
have
we
it
can look
for
at it?
next week if I can.
Okay. Next, we have revised meeting schedule.
So we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting under director's comments, but JJ brought to my attention that this year we've canceled not quite 20% of all our meetings, so we're looking at a revised meeting schedule, and the board said they were interested in seeing what that would look like. So what you have before you, and just really look at the September through December portion, it has two business meetings and 2 workshops a month. Is what we're proposing. Again, we don't have the quarterly reports in there like we used to because of COVID, so we haven't been doing those this year. But the schedule it accounts for Christmas and Thanksgiving to make sure we're not butting up against that either, so.
I'm okay with the revised schedule, even though I have to change some plans.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Commissioner Boyce?
I just assume that we're going to be able to add 9 to 2 o'clock workshop, September 2nd?
Yeah, the calendar shows that there would be a workshop. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the board, I did poll the board to see if they would have a special workshop. Commissioner Pash said yes, and Commissioner Gold said yes, provided the handouts were submitted with the agenda voting slip.
Can't do that. It's okay, okay. Why did you make it conditional?
I did.
Okay. So we're in agreement that it can wait, and I will give it to the public and everybody at the same time.
I think it's very unfair that you don't give it to us, because any presentation that you always do.
Did any presentations today, sir, were they sent in for public analysis early on?
Well, yes, actually, if you look back, yes, they were. If you were to look back at
We
the
got this-
September suicide awareness, it was put exactly on the AGRS what it would be about, and then there was the whereas, or the proclamation underneath that, correct?
Okay, if you want to use that one, how about the ocean and we got the one from Cooskary Electric yesterday. I need the board to work with me on this. If you're not going to work, then we'll just withdraw the whole thing, because I think what's going to happen is you're getting pressure from somebody, and to have it come as a workshop and initiate your involvement, plus or minus, and then take a week, have another workshop, whatever. What you're trying to do, you're trying to get me to have something that's perfected, and if there's no interest, I don't want to spend any more time on it, sir. So if it's conditional that the information, the presentation has to be sent in advance, then no, I'm not interested in doing that, at least not being forced to. You know, I might reconsider, but yeah.
Commissioner Gold?
Let me just say this. We're talking about restructuring the county here. And this directly affects all of us, the public, the commissioners, and I think we need to have a lot of time to think about it. Part of our strategic plan is public trust. How can we have public trust if we don't have full transparency? So I am really adamantly opposed of having something like this come before us without being able to study it and look it over beforehand, not just come in and wing it the day of.
So Commissioner Gold, after 4 years, if you come up with an idea or plan or recommendation, or you want to come before the board and stick your neck out, then I will support your right to say, I want to present it to everyone at the same time. So this has been a source of almost conflict. From the very beginning, I was silenced when I could have just put the very basics up. Said, no, it's got to go to workshop because somebody in the community apparently was unhappy. And so I said, okay, I'll do it at the workshop. And then somehow it got out, and I already was subjected to criticism when I'm saying, hey, dang, guys, it's just a draft. Can we just bring it out and do a workshop and start the conversation? And, yeah, I have some real strong opinions on where this county should go. You know, there's businesses in our county that are closing down right now and probably will never come back. And we're trying to tell the public that this is a positive business movement forward? No way. It gives the public the wrong message, and it gives the appearance that our board is indifferent to the suffering out there, and that we're not willing to make tough choices. So I just don't want to be subjected to criticism if I lose a comma, or if my ideas are not well accepted, just like the analysis on should we consider selling Lobster Creek or other properties in the county. So I sense that I've frustrated you both here, and I'm sorry for that. But if you're not going to give me that time to where we can sit down as a board and have an honest dialogue, an honest give and take, and look for solutions and say, boys, 2 of those ideas are good, but these 3 over here, I don't think I can do that. It hopefully will generate some public interest so we can bring the department managers, the other elected officials, and the citizens into discussion. Otherwise, it's just going to be shot out of the water before it even gets a chance.
Commissioner Gold?
Thank you.
I would really think that you would welcome having people to be able to analyze it ahead of time so that we could come up with maybe a possible solution to help with this. But being blindsided is not my idea.
Okay, blindsided. When and you talk about transparency, I'll put my record of transparency and integrity up with you any day, Miss.
Parent, point of
Yeah.
order, point of order.
What?
So,
Blindsided. Why don't you gavel her? Blindsided. This board needs to figure out
point
how
of
to
order,
work
sir,
together.
please. So let me ask you, I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to show us what you're wanting us to have a workshop on. Why does it need to be a surprise?
I don't want it to get torpedoed before it even gets to first base.
How can it be torpedoed, sir?
Okay.
If I commit to a workshop, I'm committed to that workshop.
Then I'll give you the information that day and the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation. We can stop, go. You can run the mouse if you want, okay? So I appreciate you got a spirit of maybe a resolution here, but I don't see you coming to my side of the equation. So I think we spent enough time on it. Thank you.
So do you want to cancel the workshop then?
If we put it to a vote, I think that'll be automatic.
No, all I'm saying is I would like to see something prior to, how about 24 hours prior to?
Now, that is a compromise. That is an effort to say, can we get off dead center?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that I have an obligation here to respond in the affirmative on that. So I'll get it out 24 hours. Thank you.
Okay, and then
If we're in agreement.
And if we do that, Ms. Melzer, we can get that put up on the public's website so everyone can, like normal, everyone sees.
Okay, so when we have a workshop or a meeting, we have to have a 24-hour notice. So is what you're saying, is what you're saying is if we get the packet 24 hours in advance, we go ahead and schedule the workshop?
No. We're going to schedule the workshop, and then Commissioner Boyce has already stated that he'll give us the packet 24 hours in advance.
I'll try and get it to you Monday, would that be the 31st? Yeah.
Yeah.
Monday afternoon, the 31st,
Okay.
which will make it easier for staff Jesuit to get the public notice out.
Yeah, I'll talk to Julie later about how I want to receive it. Thanks.
Commissioner Gold, do you have any solutions on how we can move forward?
We can talk about those at the workshop. I'd like to try and get through our meeting by lunch so that we can continue on executive. We've got a very busy afternoon. If we could, director's report, please.
Okay, so I just want to let the board know, and I'm sure you already know this, that we have sent letters out on the property registration ordinance. We've received a lot of feedback on them. So I've talked with Dave Fortman, and after he talks to the people, it seems like he has put some numbers together. He estimates that about 90% of them agree with the ordinance once they understand what it's all about and they get to talk to him. About 50% of them actually think it's great, something that's really needed. He said there's about 10% that hate it and just appear to hate government. So he said one of the problems or things he wants to question the board about so I just want to share this with you, is try not to engage with people on this, because you have to remember, if somebody appeals this, they appeal it to you, and then you're going to have to recuse yourself from those discussions. So we really need to keep those lines defined and let Dave administer the ordinance, and then your role is to serve as the appeal body at that time.
Okay, JJ, no more forwarding calls to me.
What I do is I explain to them that Mr. Fortman is the staff person appointed to administer the ordinance, and I refer him to Dave. So we do have 2 interviews today. We have one at 1 o'clock and one at 4. We did try to move it up earlier, but the gentleman just couldn't get off of work, so it's a 4 o'clock interview. Just to keep you up to date on my schedule, I'm going home again on September 11th, and I'll be there for 2 weeks, and then I'll be coming back. I just want to give you an update on OpenGov. So we had our first peripheral training this last week, and now we're going to move into detailed training. So it was just to make sure everybody, the finance staff, everybody was on board with how it's set up and how it works. And then we'll now move into actual training with our numbers, and then begin training with all staff on that as well as time goes on. In the finance department, we do have Carrie Dexter, a newer employee. She is interested in learning more about HR and accounting. She's willing to go to school, so we're going to spend some of our training money to actually put her through to get some initial certifications, like an HR certification, accounting certification. That's not uncommon. We do that with many of our staff. We pay for, their training to get them further along. Just update on emergency management. Jeremy submitted an application to get us 4 AED kits, and it looks like it's pretty promising, so that'll be really nice. Then we could have one in all floors and locations throughout the complex. One thing I do want to talk to you about, and this was brought to my attention by Mary Rowe, I really have to give her credit for bringing this up. But she was talking about how it seems like certain commissioners just advocate for certain groups. And I explained to her, I said, well, that's because they're the liaison to that group. That's why they advocate for that group. And she said, well, why isn't anybody advocating for the physically disabled or the seniors? And I said, well, because there is no physically disabled board or senior citizen board that we can participate in, that we can then help advocate for them. And so I told her I would run it by the board, but I think if the board's okay with that, I'm going to try and find a board that we can serve on or be a liaison to, like we do some of these other groups, to help get them a bigger voice in front of the commissioners. So if you're okay with that, I'm going to pursue that. Okay.
You have in mind who might be the liaison on that,
Pardon me?
if I may ask?
Yes.
We don't know who the liaison be. We don't know what board it would be yet or what group it would be. I would say offhand, I do think Commissioner Gold should be on a senior citizen board, not because of your age, Commissioner, but it's because you do a tremendous amount of work already with the Meals on Wheels and some of the other senior programs. So I think it would make sense to have you on something like that. But let's find out what the boards are and then follow up with a discussion on that.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Council Huddle?
Thank you. Something came in while we were having our meeting today on the property registration. We have an exemption for state, local, and federal government agencies, and there was a question from the Coquille tribe who owns property in the county and said, does that also exempt federally recognized Indian governments? And I think that's a question of interpretation for the board, and if the board wants to think about that and make that decision later today or something, we could communicate that back to Mr. Fortman and the tribe. So I could maybe look at it a little bit over the
I'd like
lunch
you to
break.
look at it, if you wouldn't
Okay,
mind. Thank you.
Do you have a time? No, I have nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
Let me speak about a couple of things. First of all, the buses from Curry Transit have pretty well been spoken for. Gold Beach School District is going to be getting one of them. Also, possibly the Homeless Coalition. She just has to take it before her board. If that doesn't happen, then Port Orford School District is also interested in it. Right now, I've been spending quite a bit of time as an advocate for the Gold Beach Community Center and getting their Meals on Wheels program funded through SCBEC, and I'm working on that. We went over there and visited with them yesterday. They've got quite a program going there, so I'm very impressed with the ladies that are running that. Dee Ragsdale is the chair of their board and has a vast experience in overseeing grants and so forth. Also, I've received a visit from the past park hosts of Boys Cope Park, and I met with Javon and Denise Stanson, and they indicated that they were former park hosts at Boys Cope Park, and they had to leave because of health problems. They also told me that the Anthony DeRock was very good and provided with them with all the necessary tools for them to succeed as park hosts, and were very adamant that they did not leave because of their interactions with him. And I also received a very glowing email about Mr. DeRock, stating that he was wonderful. He answered many, many questions and returned calls and so forth. He's a true asset to your park system. And we met at the camp, and Anthony went over all things that needed to be shown and in the entire camp area. So they had a wonderful experience, so kudos to him and his staff. And that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner, I'm waiting for my, wait a minute, this might have popped up. I don't want to waste anyone's time, so if this takes a minute, maybe you can do your remarks. Well, first, I guess while I'm waiting for this to come up, I can say that on the ARS, as the board chair here, and I'm watching things come across, you know, we have time. We have, you know, when we fill out our ARSs, it asks how long is your presentation going to take, and again, I know things can sometimes be let off into, you know, going over on our times, but it seems as though some of our times are going way over. Like Parks was scheduled for 15 minutes, and I know it turned into a different conversation, but it ended up being 40 minutes, and we've had that continuing thing. So I would just ask whoever's filling out the ARSs if you would please work a little harder to figure in question and answer periods and those kind of things, so that we can better schedule people's time, and we don't have people sitting here sometimes for hours, when if they know they're not supposed to, or they don't need to be here till 11, they can head over here at 10:30. Something else that greatly concerns me, I was asked a month or so ago if I would sit on the ORCA board. I believe actually initially Commissioner Boyce asked me about that at one meeting just in passing. I contacted them, and Brooke Matthews was the executive administrator. Her and I had several conversations. She was very, I could read the emails, but I won't, very thrilled to have me asking to be on their board. They were excited to have Curry County on their board, and they actually asked me to fill out all the paperwork and submitted it, and they actually moved some appointments already so that I could attend the meetings. Our first meeting is this afternoon, and this morning I received a letter saying, we would like to thank you for your interest in joining Oregon Coast Community Action Board. Our Board Development Committee has reviewed your application. They were and appointing nominations. They review not only your qualifications, but also your alignment with our mission. And after further review, of our candidates, the Board Development Committee has decided not to move forward with your appointment nomination at this time. Now, it may seem that there were other people that were already being looked at for this as well, and I was still on the hook. However, I was asked the other day if they needed me to make a hotel reservation because it was going to be a late night meeting. So something has transpired in the past few days with ORCA. I'm not sure what it is. I will do nothing further to investigate it. I think it's important that the citizens of this county know that As Commissioner Boyce stated a while ago, people work behind the scenes to push things forward and or against. And someone actually worked hard overtime to invite me to this board, and then someone worked harder overtime to get me removed from the board 8 hours prior to my first meeting. And that's all I have. Commissioner Boyce, your comments?
Chair, that's a very important organization. We're going to miss Mike Lehman, certainly, former legislator, incredibly interested in Curry County. I would be interested in signing a letter. Sorry. We're going to miss Mike Lehman. I would be interested in signing a letter to, it's very important we have a Curry County representative on there. I would prefer that representative to be you. And so just a little bit of further inquiry, at least to think about that. And so where do we go from here? If there's, for whatever reason, a commissioner is disregarded or dismissed, I don't understand.
I was basically told that their decision, their board has made their decision, and that's final, and good luck.
Maybe you shouldn't have questioned the HUD vouchers last year. Maybe you've ruffled some feathers by asking them why our veterans weren't getting the housing vouchers they needed.
That's probably it, because I am one of those people that knocks on all the doors, and I probably offended someone in their board that, because I'm trying to find out why our people aren't getting housing as they should, as it's vouchered, and I'm being told two different stories, and as Ms. Meltzer just stated, I probably upset somebody. So I just find it amazing that 8 hours before our first meeting and offered for hotel reservations and everything else, that I was already on the board. I filled out all their applications and paperwork, and I am now notified this morning that thank you for your application, but we're now refusing it. We've chosen someone else.
Doesn't help with your relationship.
Well, I remain interested in helping and even being a little confrontational on that. I don't know any of the board members. I've not had any contact with Orca for a long time, but I would think a letter from the board supporting you and asking for clarification would be very important. So I'll leave that up to you if you want to bring it later.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I need help getting out of this thing here.
What
I'll
at the
do it.
bottom?
Want me to do it?
Would you? While we're doing that, Commissioner Gold, when we had our last meeting, just a little bit of clarification here, you were concerned that we didn't do an MOU, if I understood correctly. Didn't go back and look at the tape, but you were concerned that with Park Resources, we didn't do a memorandum of understanding. We did approve that on November 20th, 2019, and you voted yes. So I want to make sure the public knows that we were doing our homework, and the bottom line is I still want the board to help me get a grant writer. We don't have anybody qualified or with the time to do that here, and I felt like I had a little bit of resistance on the whole Park Resources Stan Foster presentation. So, Commissioner Gold, are you satisfied that we did sign that and we did do properly our homework?
I'm just going to have to research it.
Here it is,
what
right here. You
meeting?
can have this.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So, yeah, I made a visit to Boys Cove Park Saturday. It's the first time I've been up there since, I think, January or February. This is our old camp host, Ron Ketchum. Neat guy, you know, there's some history there, but, you know, he's gone now, and he did a great job. This is shortly after the restrooms were, well, excuse me, about a year after they're completed. I'll go through these kind of fast. It's just an incredible piece of property, and we don't want the public, we don't want the Curry citizens to go up there till after middle of September, because there is no room. But if you want to ever drive through there and just take a look, it's a little bit crowded now, but not unacceptably so. This is primarily where our revenue comes from. It's really the only park we have to manage except for Lobster Creek. I'm anxious to get to, those are all kiteboarders. I mean, thank you. It's absolutely amazing the number of people that come there. And they're mostly younger, health-oriented folks. I mean, they're bicyclists. They are, I don't want to say skateboarders, but You know, it's been years since I've been up in the middle of the summer, and I go back to Jay Trost and the work he did, and it's just really a tremendous asset to the county. I'll keep you in suspense. I'm not going to leave it up long enough that you read the whole thing, but there is some wonderful history there. Oh, that's kind of a duplicate. This is a shop, well maintained. A little better picture of Saturday's kite flyers. Or no, is that what it is, kite flyers? I think that's the proper term. I'm drawing a blank.
Kite surfing.
Oh, thank you. The bridge. So let's see, I got to go to the next one real quick here. Oh, I'll go back to here. There's one of those ugly propane tanks. These are the two parks that were a little bit in question on, you know, where should the park host be. We only have one park host right now, but we have some people that have been long-term patrons there that are watching over and helping our current park managers. And I would say these folks are friends after Saturday, but, you know, I in the application process, they were characterized as my friends, and we got to talking, and I found out the last time I saw these folks, other than in my office, inquiring on why their application wasn't being reviewed, and I got to the bottom of that and challenged them a little bit, and people in the office. And anyway, the last time I saw them prior to this month was 2001, so almost 20 years ago. So anybody that, yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. But they're really good people. Those are duplicates. There you go. This is the day use area that sometimes some of the neighbors are concerned that people are parking there and not and using the facilities and not helping out, not paying. So let's see what we got next. You know, the gloves are off with AOC. They are, you know, I want to read this, but not read the whole letter. It's only 2.5 pages. But basically, the governor is challenging the counties to lead by example. And boy, I'll tell you, all the effort to stay positive with the governor's office, with all that her and her staff are dealing with, but to say we're not leading by example when the counties are the boots on the ground, when they've only offered $200 million of the CARES Relief Act funds of the $600 million that's supposed to come to the county. The state has put a Fort Knox around the other $400+ million, and so the counties, maybe taking the gloves off is too strict, or perhaps an overstatement. But we are educating our people. We are here every day. We are supporting our public health. We are leading by example, whether you don't like the mask or not. You know, we are encouraging our citizens. We've been here, the counties have been on the front lines since the very beginning, every day. Okay, and they're going to enforce, you know, the mask. You know, I have a new acronym. It's not BR549 hee-haw, but it is brewery, restaurant, and bar recovery. I mean, I am so concerned about our restaurants and where we are, and if we can keep them going, you know, that's where that CARES money is going to help. Subject to board approval, and you've heard me say public health needs more money, needs more support. And so my hat really goes off to AOC in this instance because, you know, they're trying desperately to get the emergency board, to get to the governor's office, to hold the counties together, to get the money that is due our counties. And I don't know where this is going. I hope cooler heads can keep prevailing, but, you know, we're the 26th largest county out of 36. So population-wise, there are 10 others smaller than us. So you can do the math if you just want to do an average of what that money should do. And I also have one slide here where, let's see if I can get it. That's the end of another letter to the emergency board, and plus they're there in the Capitol wearing their mask. This is the timeline starting clear back on March 27th when the federal government promptly worked on getting the money to the states And you know the rest of the story. I know we don't want, it's 12:04. I know we got a lot to do, but this is so critical. If there's citizens out there that are watching this or need information from our office or me, and you want to write the governor's office, I know that Dallas Hurd, Senator, and Representative Brock Smith are working overtime trying to get this, get the funding that is due us. And it is, it's not going like we would like. So the timeline here just simply represents that AOC has done their homework and has responded to each one of these timelines. And I just wish I had really positive news to tell everybody on where this is going. And yeah, more later. I don't know what's next. Same. Oh, excuse me. This is the questionnaire that I need help filling out. Yes, this is, they need us, and this might be a stall tactic from the state. My presumption is that Administrator Ward does not have time to do this, but we only have a couple more days to get this done. I have not had time. Been distracted with some other stuff that is, I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, it's not that hard of a form to fill out, but we need to get that to AOC, which will get it to the state in a collective deal from all the counties, and basically says, here's what our predictions are for the rest of the year. Here's what our predictions are for next year. Maybe it'll shake some of that money loose, but I need help on this. I'm not qualified enough to even, well, excuse me, I'm not qualified enough that this can't be an arbitrary deal. It has to be a joint board, you know, and yeah, it's pages. I apologize, guys. Okay, moving on to the port. Look right here in the hand. The next community development block grant, I think, could very well go to the Port of Brookings Harbor for their wastewater treatment plant. We've been spent a lot of time with DeFazio and his staff, Dan Wellen, Ed McGlone. He was here. He looked at this. He spent time with the port. He knows about the aggregate issues here. Bill McNair from Jerry's took him out, and it was high tide, you know, on the whole aggregate thing. But this one picture shows a lot of what could happen at the port. You know, we got by rights, some of them, the next CGBG grant should come to Gold Beach or Port Orford. However, I'm working with Port Orford on their community center, and they've already raised, I think, you know, $80,000. So, and we might actually, through Business Oregon, and the help of Tracy Loomis and Teresa Haga, Coos Curry Douglas Business Development, we might actually qualify for 2 Curry big grants in the next biennium. So I was down here yesterday. They are very well organized. Excuse me, what we want the grant for is to do simply the planning, the process for this wastewater treatment facility, and that's right up Congressman DeFazio's alley. So stay tuned on that. So back to Port of Port Orford. Boy, there's just some really great things happening there. They may have lost their $1.6 million, at least temporarily, that David Brock Smith worked so hard on to get, and we'll see what happens there. But at some point, I'm going to bring a letter before the board that can support the Port of Port Orford on the different funds. First of all, to try and retrieve or recover those funds on the 1.6 from the state. Obviously, with the cuts, they're making a lot of tough choices. You've seen this picture before, I think. This is the most unique port in the western United States. Whoop. I don't know what I'm doing wrong there. But the main thing I'm trying to get at here, thanks to DeFazio, you know, he and I don't agree on everything, but he worked hard to get this dredge in, and this goes around the corner here, clear off the screen to where the big cranes are, the big hoists that actually physically lift the boats out of the water and put them on trailers during rough water times. So this was really fascinating to watch. That gives you a little better picture, going fast here, just more, I don't know what these are. Oh, this is the terrestrial timber cell, which is in Powers. Can I hit that right there?
Try just clicking on the image.
Oh, come up a little bit. This is something I'm really excited about, and I hope that our mills in Curry County, and I'll go fast on this, but the deadline is September 2nd. It is the biggest timber sale that Mac Timchak has ever worked on. It is 17 million board feet, which is close to 4,000 log truck loads. It would be at least a full year supply. I'm told, I think I have that correct, for South Coast Lumber. The only problem is it's 2.5 hours, a 2.5-hour haul to, from Powers Ranger District to the Brookings Mills. It is, they're going to do almost $1 million worth of road work that the bid organization would do. The reason I brought this up to the board today is because it's a 9/2 deadline, or 9/11, I forget now, I'm sorry. Anyway, the last big Powers District sale went to McFarland in Washington, and they actually took it all the way to the state. So we're hoping that South Coast can find a way to bid on this and be competitive, and also certainly at least the mills in Douglas County. So this is just a little bit of a bid perspective, and stay tuned. This could be, the money that would come back to the county through PILT would be gigantic. I think, let's see. I think that's it. Where do you see?
All right, so with that, we are going to recess this meeting, and we have a 1 o'clock separate meeting, so our board will reconvene at 2 o'clock. Nobody touched it. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay, because the TV in here is off. All right, it is 7:15 on August 26th. We are back in session. Staff is to proceed as directed from our executive session. With nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.